P, ready to go? Very good. Good evening. It is Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. It's 5:30 p.m. This is the regular meeting of the Morro Bay City Council, and we are located in the Veterans Memorial Hall at 209 Surf Street. Pursuant to Assembly Bill number 361 and 2122 and Government Code Section 54953, this meeting will be conducted in a hybrid format, but both in-person and virtual participation. Ways to watch this meeting and submit public comment are provided on the agenda, and/or you can also get that on the screen if you're watching via channel 20. With that, I'll ask the clerk to establish a quorum, please. Present.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Addis?
Here.
Councilmember Ford?
Here.
Councilmember Heller?
Here.
And Councilmember Barton is here, and Mayor Heading.
Present.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Heller is traveling and may be joining us via Zoom, so we'll note the time, and if he does join the meeting, what time he Zooms in. So with that, we do have a quorum. I'll call the meeting to order and ask in your own way if you could take a moment of silence in your own way, remembering those especially that the killings that occurred in Colorado this past week. Thank you. Thank you. And if you'll stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I'll ask our city attorney if we have any closed session reports. Chris?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. No closed session items to report.
Okay, thank you for that. And with that, we'll go to Mayor and Council members' reports. Council Member Ford, do you have anything for us this evening?
I do, and as usual, I have a list. Sorry. All right. I have a couple of upcoming events to give you or make sure that you're aware of. This Thursday, in celebration of Thanksgiving, the Lions Club, among other organizations, will be distributing a meal to those who are either in need or maybe just don't want to cook their own Thanksgiving meal that day and would like to come by and enjoy a nice hot meal. It's available to our community for free. And so I'm very thankful for all the hard workers, the volunteers, all of those who have donated to make this possible every year. And so if you would like to participate and come and get a hot meal, you can come to the community center, which is located at 1001 Kennedy Way, and the dinners will be available between 1 and 3 p.m. And so this year they're going to be doing to-go meals again, as they did in the past year. Also, in the month of December, there will be Breakfast with Santa on December 3rd from 8:30 until 11:30 at the Community Center. That's a great family fun event. And later on that day, on the 3rd, there'll be a lighted boat parade, which starts around 6:30. Here in our bay, which is always a joy to watch. And I forgot to mention the day before that, on December 2nd at 3:30 at City Park, we'll have our holiday tree lighting ceremony, which is always a great way to start the weekend. And let's see here. Oh, and then there's the Caroling Cops. We can't forget about that. December 5th, 6th, and 7th. They'll start on the 5th in North Morro Bay, and the 6th they'll be in Central Morro Bay, and the 7th in Southern Morro Bay. And you can find out more information soon on our website, our city website. And there's also, if you're on Facebook, you can go to the Morro Bay PD's Facebook page to find out more. They put out a post about it. So lots of good information there, and we're excited for them to do that again. Our kids enjoy that. And let's see here. So I went ahead and attended the Visit SlowCal Advisory Committee meeting. They hold 2 a year. And one of the exciting things that I took from it is that they have started what's called the SlowCal Welcome online course. It's a training course that they partnered with Race Matters Slow and Gala Pride and Diversity Center. They created a comprehensive training program for businesses to utilize if you're interested in training your employees on equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's out there and offered to our community to take advantage of. And so if you want more information on it, you can go to slowcal.com/welcome. And let's see here. What else do I have for you? You know what? I'm just going to skip right on to a big, huge thank you to our very own council member, Dawn Addis. This is her last evening with us as a council member because she will be sworn in as our State Assemblywoman for District 30. She'll be representing us in the state of California, and so she'll be sworn in before the last meeting when there is a switchover of council, so she will not be able to be on the dais during that time. So this is her last evening with us as a council member, and it's an honor to serve with you and to sit next to you here, and I just want to thank you for your service. It's as a person who has taken on this position myself, I fully realize the amount of work that you have to put in to be an effective council member, and I just appreciate you giving 4 years of your life to do this for us, and so I wish you the best of luck in your next title that you'll be serving for us, and just a big, huge thank you. So. And that concludes my announcements. Thank you, Mayor.
Good, thank you for that. You just took item number 2 on present. No, I'm just kidding. For that, Councilmember Addis. Any announcements?
I do, Mayor. I just have one announcement that I've been sharing at the last few meetings, that Arsenic and Old Lace will be playing at Morro Bay High School December 8th, 9th, and 10th at 7 p.m., and you can get tickets at mbhs.slcusd.org. It's going to be in the small gym, and a lot of excitement around this play for our community, so I hope to see you there.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Barton.
I was just going to say thank you to Jen for highlighting the lighted boat parade. I have kids coming that night, and they were so excited to hear about this thing. It's apparently hit a nerve, and so I'm delighted that they're coming and we'll be able to do that. So thanks.
I'll save my comments for Councilmember Addis during her presentation. With that, thank you. Mr. Collins, anything to announce this evening?
Nothing to announce tonight, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to our presentations. We do have one proclamation this evening, and if Tracy Mueller-Gibbs is present, Tracy, come on up to the front. Is Tracy here this evening?
She's joining us via Zoom.
Oh, via Zoom, okay. Let me know when she's... Tracy, are you on Zoom? There you are. Welcome. Can you hear me okay? Yep. Great, thank you. This is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay, proclaiming November as Family Court Awareness Month, and it reads as follows. Whereas the mission of the Family Court Awareness Month Committee is to increase awareness of the importance of a family court system that prioritizes child safety and acts in the best interest of children. And whereas the mission at the FCAMC is fueled by the desire to create awareness and change in the family court system for the conservatively estimated 58,000 children a year ordered into unsupervised contact with abusive parents. while honoring the hundreds of children who have been reported as murdered during visitation with a dangerous parent. And whereas the mission of the FCAMC is to increase awareness on the importance of empirically based education and training on domestic violence and child abuse, including emotional, psychological, physical, and sexual abuse, as well as childhood trauma, coercive control, and post-separation abuse for judges and all professionals working on cases within the family court system. And whereas the mission of the FCAMC is to increase awareness on the importance of using scientifically valid, evidence-based treatment programs and services that are proven in terms of safety, effectiveness, and therapeutic value. And whereas the mission at the FCAMC is to educate judges and other family court professionals on evidence-based peer-reviewed research. Such research is a critical component to making decisions that are truly in the best interest of children. The research includes the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, the Child Custody Evaluator's Beliefs about Domestic Abuse Allegations Study, Daniel Sanders, University of Michigan, and the Child Custody Outcomes in Cases Involving Parental Alienation and Abuse Allegations. And now therefore be it resolved that the City of Morro Bay does hereby proclaim November as Family Court Awareness Month in the City of Morro Bay, and we encourage all recipients or residents to support efforts to prevent the harm of children in the hands of family members and to honor and value the lives of our children. And Tracy, if you'd like to make some comments, we'd be happy to allow that. Are you muted? We can't hear you. Yeah. No. All right. No, I can't. Well, I do apologize for that. I don't know. AGP, do we have a valid connection?
It does appear to be a connection-based issue.
Okay. Well, we apologize for that, technical difficulties, but we do again thank Tracy for being here to accept this proclamation this evening. Thank you. And with that, Mr. Collins, I do believe you have a special presentation this evening.
All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. Delighted, sad, I don't know what the emotion is, but just wanted to thank our esteemed council member, Dawn Addis, for her dedication and service to our community over the past 4 years as council member, as well as the several prior years as a member of the Citizen Finance Advisory Committee. We appreciate all the hours you poured in, the meetings you've attended, groups you've met with, late nights, early mornings, city events attended, etc. I do recall the first time I met with you, you'd asked to meet with me and said you were interested in running for city council. And anybody ever sends an email to me like that, I say, yes, please. Please consider, because it's so important we have community members run for office to help lead our community forward. And I remember asking a question, well, why? Or what's your interest? And you said you wanted to see projects get done, and you also said you wanted to see women in position of influence and leadership, and I think you've succeeded on both fronts. So with that, we want to wish you good luck in Sacramento, and I know you'll represent us well. So if you can come on down, we'll present you with a token of our gratitude and appreciation. And I'll also ask Marcus if you can come up. Sure. Thank you. So thank you so much, Councilmember Addis. And also we need to extend our gratitude to your family represented here and your husband, Marcus. As much as the individual who sits up there sacrifices, so does the spouse who gets to hear all the fun stuff when she comes home. So we appreciate all you've done to help support her. And thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck.
thank you, Marcus, for allowing her to serve. We appreciate that. She would have done it anyway, I know. Councilmember Addis, for almost the last time. Few comments maybe here on the dais. Thank you, Councilmember Ford, for your comments. Dawn, it has been a pleasure to serve with you, a great honor. And Joy, we have served on a number of subcommittees together, for which I believe we have enriched and improved our community. I am so excited for you that you'll be in Sacramento, representing not only your district, but the city of Morro Bay as well. And so personally, I just want to, from my own heart, thank you for your friendship, for your service to this community, for the time commitment that it takes, which is significant, and also congratulate you on a great race and an opportunity to move forward with representation in Sacramento that will be wonderful for the city of Morro Bay. So thank you so much for your service, and we hope to see you home often in the district. Any other council member comments? No? You've already said yours. Right? Good. So thank you for that. All right.
I have comments.
Yes, you I hope you do. Yes.
Tiny bit emotional. But no, you know, I'm incredibly honored to have been elected to the State Assembly, and many of you that are here tonight help me do that. And so I'm excited to carry your voice to the halls of the state capitol. And as it's already been said, I've been here 4 years. I've served my term. Tonight is my last meeting, solely because the swearing in Sacramento comes before the last meeting of this council. So I have quite a few thank yous to give. But I do want to say that first and foremost, Morro Bay has been our family's home. You can see my husband and one of our children and my mother-in-law in the audience. My mom watches these meetings every week that we're here. And it's been a place that we've watched our children grow and thrive, and where we brought our own parents to live because we love this place. And so getting to serve this community has been a true highlight. And it's been something that I will always carry with me, whether it's in Sacramento or anywhere else that I go. So I want to say first and foremost, thank you to the voters who put their faith in me 4 years ago. I still am humbled to have earned your support then and to have had this opportunity to be here. I also want to thank my family that's in the audience and on Zoom. As Scott said, and the mayor said, there's a lot of days and evenings that they've given me support, but it's really because they believe in our city. They believe in the things that we can do if we work as a team and we come together to make sure that good things happen. And I want to express my gratitude to the late council member Davis and his wife. He sat in this seat before me and was a mentor as well as a friend, and his leadership really benefited all of us. And I've been, you know, across the last 4 years, I've been continuously in awe of the work that is done in this city. I'm incredibly grateful to city staff because small but mighty really only scratches the surface of what happens and how our city staff is consistent with doing more with less. I know the public doesn't always see this, but staff really supports council as well as our community. We're consistently punching above our weight, and it's because of the work of our staff and the love that they have for our city. And then my colleagues here on council, I've been incredibly fortunate. I know Jeff's not here, who come each time we have a meeting. They come because they love Morro Bay. And they sit up here on the dais in the midst of immense criticism sometimes, because we all love Morro Bay, each person in the audience as well as each person on the dais. And we don't always agree, and I think that's been apparent across our time together, but I've seen each of us work diligently to find the commonality that we need to move our city forward, and that's exciting to me. When I was seated on the council 4 years ago, I came to this position with a commitment in 5 areas: to increase housing, to improve infrastructure, to protect and promote our coast, to create a thriving economy, and to make sure all voices were heard. And I'm grateful to the work of this council as well as staff that we've really delivered in all of these areas. We, during my term, we've broken ground on the very first 100% low-income housing in 30 years. We've created long-term water security and begun to address the needs of our streets and roads and other infrastructure. We've conserved a place that all of us love, Dog Beach, in perpetuity as a wild open space and become a constructive contributor on the Toro Creek Preserve. We've partnered with our chamber to help businesses and nonprofits thrive, and we've opened up government and city finances in new ways. This was a long-term project that the community was really asking for, so that more people do have access now. And we did a lot of other things. We've navigated the COVID crisis with some of the lowest case rates in our county and across our state, and I really attribute that to the community of Morro Bay, the people of Morro Bay. But we also affirmed our supportive role in the face of terrible things happening across our nation. We went out on a limb to increase gun safety in our community, and we've pushed for gender equity. We also successfully funded our safety services. We didn't say we'd have one without the other. The community came together to fund our safety services, to protect and increase wages. And through all of this, I think we've never lost sight of our purpose, which is to serve the residents of Morro Bay. So I want to thank this council for that, my colleagues for that, staff for that. And this is a time, I'll just end with this. We're in a time where we face urgent challenges of the climate crisis. I believe it's more important than ever that we embrace the experience, the strength, and the passion that we have to change lives, because Morro Bay sits at the center of the climate solutions that our world needs. We are the epicenter, and this is where we have the opportunity to make a true difference. So with that, because I won't be able to attend the next meeting, I want to welcome the new council members that are going to be seated next month. I want to celebrate the potential that you have and that those in the audience have to support this new council, and not just doing good for Morro Bay, but to be the leaders who make the choices that will reset our future. You can reset the future of our city, but also our county, state, and world when it comes to solving the climate crisis. You have power in your hands to solve our most pressing issues. So with gratitude, I just want to say farewell at the beginning of the meeting, not the end, and just say that I remain your friend, your neighbor, your community member. My door is always open, and I hope that you'll reach out. And so thank you so much, Mayor.
Well stated, Councilmember Addis. Appreciate that. Okay, you have some slips for me. That brings us to public comment. This is general public comment for members of the audience who wish to speak on any items on the agenda for which you cannot stay, or any other comments you'd like to make to the city. As usual, I'll start with the slips that I have, and then I'll open it up if anybody else would like to come up. And then we'll go to Zoom and try to capture anybody that may be calling in. So let me start. Aaron Oakes. Welcome, Aaron.
Good evening, members of the council and staff. My name is Aaron Oakes of Morro Bay, and I wanted to thank Councilwoman Addis for taking the big leap into the state assembly position. I know it's going to be a lot of responsibility going in, and the community of Morro Bay wishes you the best going forward. And I personally wish you the very best in your endeavors in Sacramento. Last week, Vistra Energy invited residents to what they called an informational meeting about their proposed battery energy storage system. And Vistra provided basic information about the project, but representatives either refused or were unable to answer critical questions. Questions about various environmental hazards, case studies and reports of issues at similar facilities and national security risk. The key task for Vistra is to answer questions on the record, not behind closed doors with city officials or personal one-on-one conversations with residents. Our city manager, Scott Collins, told the New Times in October that Vistra came to our town in 2018. They had 4 years to lay the groundwork for a robust discussion about their plans. And 4 years later, all we got are enlarged, ambiguously worded PowerPoint slides mounted on cheap foam boards and easels, and a couple of community workshops that weren't properly noticed or recorded. Public reporting on various issues with lithium-ion battery storage facilities throughout the country could explain why Vistra has not been transparent. Vistra has the right to set a proposal forward for property they own, but they are not entitled to be opaque about the issues their facilities have. And Vistra is certainly not entitled to a free pass from civil and critical debate. And at some point, Vistra will be legally required to answer for significant issues that they are currently concealing. It's their duty to Morro Bay to be forthright with us. And it's our duty as residents to hold them accountable when they're not. The best way to hold them accountable is to say no to Vistra. Morro Bay is for innovation, not experimentation. Thank you.
Please, no clapping, please. You can wave, do the wave. Thank you so much. That's not a punishment. It just helps the meeting flow. Thank you. Next up is Gary's waving at me. Gary, you're up next. Come on down.
Oh, okay. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.
City Council, especially our fantastic police department and fire department. My research on the lithium storage system, and as I've reported before, if you heard me before, you know my background, it's my opinion that downtown Morro Bay is not the right place to put a highly dangerous lithium-ion battery storage facility. I believe in lithium-ion technology and other similar systems being developed to help solve our power shortage, but not a facility this large as a residential neighborhood. The technical literature I have been reading for weeks and months that a storage system this large is not a well-developed technology. This is currently not enough data, experience, availability to understand the possible indications of the site. After having a discussion with Vista personnel, I found it very disturbing. I'm sorry, but my voice is going up because I was ticked off. The company does not have a design for the lithium storage system for Morro Bay. The person I talked to said we will not go forward with the design until City of Morro Bay signs a contract. Then they'll design the system. It's my opinion Morro Bay should not sign a contract before knowing what the design's going to be. So, my background in technology, the person from Vistra could not answer any of my technical questions for the battery system because there's no design yet. And I had a lot of questions I wanted to ask about the technology. I was appalled by the whole thing. Finally, and this is not, it has been said that no matter what residents object to the project, and Vistra will finally get the go-ahead to develop the storage facility in Morro Bay. Follow the money, not in a bad way, but the city needs money. San Luis Obispo County will receive over $5 million in real estate taxes. Sacramento needs a storage system to generate the power for EVs, and Vistra will receive a reduction in their taxes. The bottom line, we will not be recognized as a small beach town if this goes through, but as a home as the world's largest lithium storage facility. Morro Bay will become an industrial city just like every other town in California. I have a few seconds left. I am so excited about the technology coming down the road. I know Betty Windholt asked me to look into the project down the street, the zinc bromide. There's a lot of possibilities here. Lockheed, where I worked on the space station, got a contract from the Army to do a beautiful system, storage system for the military. That's a big breakthrough there to have a company that large being able to look into it. So anyway, it's happening. There's dozens of them going on right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next up is Linda Winters. Welcome, Linda.
disappointed Erica Prophet isn't here. I wanted to thank her for all those Chamber of Commerce sunsets we've been having. Greetings, everyone. My name is Linda Winters, 28-year resident of here in Morro Bay, in a mobile home park close by. Subject tonight, giving thanks. Since we are only 2.5 days away from the holiday we should all celebrate in its original purpose, giving thanks, I wrote up my list. I really had to shorten it a lot for this meeting. We all experienced our elections on November 8th. I am pleased to hear how many Morro Bay citizens came out to voice their opinions. Those of you who stepped up to be candidates, I applaud your efforts. It's not easy putting yourself totally up front. And here's my first giving thanks. The election is over. No more phone calls, no more ads, no more mailers. It's done. It's done. It's over. That's my first thanks. Now let me talk about real Thanksgiving. This year, as in many, many years in the past, the Morro Bay Lions Club is hosting and producing the annual Morro Bay Thanksgiving dinner. Last year, their dedicated team of Lions transformed the community center into a gigantic assembly line, cooking and packaging 700 meals to go. That's huge. All done with volunteers, home deliveries, drive up, and lots of love. Most of you know I usually stay for the whole meeting, but tonight I may skate out a little bit early as I am one of those volunteers that need to be there bright and early. That's what I'm giving thanks for. And the election is over. All right, last but not least, I need to carry on about the wonderful things the Lions Club do and mention some of the other things for all of us. The Monday night dinners, every single Monday night, they help to produce food bank, clothing, and a hot meal for anybody who wants to come to the community dinners. And of course, the Thanksgiving dinner and the Christmas boat parade and providing help at the Avocado and Margarita Festival and Christmas dinners, just a portion of their benevolent deeds. It goes on, and I'm not even a lion. In closing, let me wish everyone a safe and peaceful Thanksgiving. Best wishes to all of you in your newly elected positions, to you, Don. And thank you to all who have served. That's my last list, my last shortened list. Thank you, happy Thanksgiving, and the election is over.
Thank you, Linda. Next up is Rachel Wilson. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and greetings. I am from Cayucas, California.
Could you back away just a little bit from the mic? It's a little loud for the public that's listening. There you go. Thank you.
All right. So anyway, I too attended the Visitor meeting, and they forgot to tell you one huge thing. And that is, the fact is, BEST does not have to be in Morro Bay. All BEST needs are transmission lines. So as the power comes into Morro Bay through the transmission lines, that energy is going to go through the grid, and it can be pulled off any place on the grid. Think about it. According to the Morro Bay website, it's going to be 30-plus miles that power is going to come in from the wind farms. So let's look and see where in California, next slide please, the power plant can safely go. If you notice, these are the perfect locations. Not only are they perfect because they are not near a population area, they are perfect because these people are going broke. They have to pay property taxes on their land, and they can't farm it because there's no water. So perfect location, far from anything else. Morro Bay can be green, but still protect our community. Next slide, please. Our main industry is tourism. According to the website, we get 800,000 tourists a year that generate $161 million of income. That's about $441,000 per day. That's equal to what Vistra says they will pay us in property taxes. Next, please. Our wildlife, this is where we're unique, where the valley is not, depends on us to be safe. We have unique wildlife. That's what brings people to Morro Bay. Next slide. So here's the other thing Vistra failed to tell you. They tell you that it's safe, but this is what they tell their shareholders. They say to their shareholders, because they can't lie to the SEC, they can lie to us. On page 40, they said fire and other dangerous incidents are inherent risks in our operations. They also say the general public may be exposed to potentially dangerous environments at or near our operations. As a result, employees, contractors, customers, and the general public are at risk for serious injury, including death. The one thing I didn't put on here that's also in this article is they admit to terrorism, that terrorists are a real threat. If you read Homeland Security right now, they say terrorists to power plants is a real threat. And the United States Army says the new terrorists are going to be drones. They can blow up this plant at about the level of 500 tons of TNT.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Next up for public comment is Terry Simons. Welcome, Terry.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and public. I have a lot to try to touch on because I really can't stay for each of the items tonight. So starting with A5, I noticed that there's a contract to another Texas company, MV Transportation, for our new trolley operations. I hope they're bringing some Vistra lithium batteries to power those trolleys so that we can get a sense of how well they work. I drive a lithium-powered vehicle, and while I'm opposed to a Morro Bay BESS, I'm very much in favor of exploring the possibilities with lithium technology in a safe way. And I think some Texas lithium batteries in our new trolleys would be a great place to start. A6, let's get the money. Let's use it at the wharf's wellhead site. We've got the plumbing there. And then I'm going to refer you to A8, which is adopt a resolution to approve participation in a regional desal plant. Wonderful idea. Water is going to be the most valuable thing on the planet going forward, and I think Morro Bay should be a location of a tremendous desal, central regional desal plant. We have lots of power coming into Morro Bay, and we have water that needs to be reclaimed from our wastewater treatment plant. You put that all together with the vacant property that Vistra currently holds in PG&E, and I spoke to the Vistra representatives. They would be inclined to support a desal operation on their property. I think it would possibly be as good, if not a better use than a battery storage facility, certainly one that could be done concurrently. B1, basically updating our building codes. We don't have a lot of choice. I think it's fine. The staff has done a good job of updating those. C1, what can I say? Approving yet another wharf quarterly document. We're getting close to the end of this, but the bleeding hasn't stopped yet. I hope that the next council will be able to control the bleeding that's occurred over the last couple of years, and that we can have future quarterly reports being better. C2, adoption of the long-awaited, much-anticipated, hoped-for new zoning code. And I do have one particular concern. I know it's been a long time coming and we're anxious to get it wrapped up. I just would hope that the next council would be given an opportunity to take an in-depth look at certain aspects of these modifications, particularly since the EIR was certified well ahead of the actual potential adoption, and I think may be invalid until it's updated.
Thank you, Terry. That's the last slip I have. Public comment still open. If anybody wishes to come forward, do so now. Just made it in time. How you doing, Barry?
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Barry Brandon, Morro Bay. I saw the council members attending the Vistra meeting, and there was a lot of information there. And I'm glad to see the two council members that will be carrying over are researching this battery storage project in depth. Your valued opinions will be important in the months coming to helping make the decision on whether we go forward or not. And as was pointed out over and over again, the threat to our school children is just greater than we can hope to expect. And I know that's the alarm that sets everybody off. I went to public schools. They served me well. I'd be ashamed to have a trauma like that. We don't have shooters in our hallways, but the toxic gases are much worse than the shooters. So please, in your forward work in your new city council, please think about the children when you get a chance to vote on the zoning and other issues with this BEST project. Please consider it. It's very important. Your votes are important to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Public comment still open? Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving in a couple days.
Could you get a little bit closer to the mic? Can't hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in a couple days. Judy Setting, Morro Bay resident. I'm hoping that Scott or anybody can possibly find out the answer to a question that I asked David Yeager at the Vistra presentation, and that was something about the height of what we're going to be seeing when we're walking or riding along on the bike path next door to the BES. And I heard him say 30 feet, 30 feet, 30 feet. But I've read in Estero Bay News a while back that it's 60 feet, that some is a little bit subterranean, and then there's a berm, and then there's 30 feet. So I'm not sure where David is getting 30 feet, and I heard him tell several people 30 feet, and I think there might be a little deception with that. I would like to request that a street rendering be done, so if we're on the bike path or we're walking on the Embarcadero, we can see what it looks like when we're looking right at it. And you guys will be doing a final zoning to change that property to service recreational commercial tonight, I believe. And I think that's wonderful, wonderful planning for Morro Bay. And I would like to ask you to keep it that way. And in the spring, please do not change it to light industrial. The citizens just don't want it. We've paid our price. We've had PG&E there. We've had acid rain. I've had cars painted back in the 80s because of it. We don't really know the extent that it's done physically or anything. Studies have not been done, but we endured that. We endured it when they would shoot off the stacks in the middle of the night in the fog so that we wouldn't know what was going on. We saw the black smoke. We didn't know. And we're entering into unknown territory again with this BES and the toxicities that are set off when they have their thermal runaway meltdowns. So please consider all the dangers and the fact that it will automatically go on the nation's terror list as a target when it's done. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment still open? Welcome, Betty.
Good evening, Betty Winholtz. I'm going to change topics. Yesterday, I received a bill from the city saying that I owed them $27 for my license. I'm a tutor at my house. I paid this back in July. And so 5 months later, they're telling me I didn't pay them enough and that I owe them money. And I know that this has been outsourced, and I've never had an issue in the 25 years I've been tutoring here. And so I think this is your problem, not my problem. And I'm wondering how to clean up this issue because there is no phone number. There's no way to contact them. So I'd like to know how to handle outsourcing of business licenses.
Betty, would you mind just leaving it with the clerk and we'll make sure we get back to you?
It's my only call.
Is that okay? Thanks. We won't lose it. Promise. Public comment still open? Anybody else? Take your time. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Vicki Hess, and I've been a longtime resident of Morro Bay. My husband and I both graduated from Morro Bay High School. We had Morro Bay Body and Paint for 29 years and can attest to all the things that Judy spoke about with the acid rain because we painted many cars. For us longtime residents, our heart really goes out that we're seeing something so dangerous to be brought back in. This has potentially more danger than what we've had before, and we stated how we're bringing in services for our youth and all of this. Well, we need to really be concerned for all of our youth, all ages, but even for old seniors that have been here for all these years. It's not a good fit, I do not believe, for our community, and I don't believe it was presented to the community. And I would pray that there would be an opportunity in some way, manner, shape, or form that things like that would be made more knowledgeable, because I don't think that it serves any of us well. But thank you for your service and for your time, and I appreciate, because I know there is much time involved in what you do, but please be open and honest and get forthright to the residents that live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment is still open. Anybody else? Seeing none. AGP, do we have anybody on the Zoom call line or comment?
Mayor, we have no raised hands.
Okay, I'll close public comment. And one more time, Mr. Graham, I know we've said it a number of times. Very quickly, could you talk about the prolonged process of approval and when public comment regarding the proposed Vistra project might occur?
Sure, absolutely. I would speak to one of the comments we're requesting renderings of the site as well. We will be getting those from Vistra further down the road in the process. Right now, we're in the beginning stages of the environmental review process. An environmental impact report is being prepared. And currently, we're in the process of getting the background studies that will support that EIR. Once those studies are submitted and finalized, they'll be posted to the city's current projects website for the BEST project. And so anybody can view them there. And if you sign up for Notify Me on the city's website, then whenever we update that page, you'll also be notified. We're probably looking at potentially going to hearings sometime in next summer, at probably the earliest. There's been some delays in getting some of the reports done, and that's creates delays in getting the EIR completed. And we're also in the process of doing a master plan in parallel with the project that would envision what could be for other areas of the site that aren't occupied by the proposed battery. How's that?
Perfect. And I think you're putting together a document for the website also that kind of outlines the process.
We do, yes, we do have we will be putting the timeline up there, and it'll be updated over time as the timeline clarifies and we get more information related to the EIR process.
Great. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay. That brings us to our consent agenda. Item A5 will be continued to the next meeting. We don't have the appropriate information or the right information, so that will be continued. So we're pulling A5 for the next meeting. Open up public comment for consent items A1 through I think 8, except for A5. Welcome, Betty.
Thank you. I'm Betty Winholtz again, and I would like to speak to 6, 7, and 8. Number 6 is regarding the application for the $1,200,000 grant. from this organization that's made up of the different water entities within the county. I listed some concerns in my letter to you. One is that the Board of Supervisors is in charge, and Public Works for the county does their bidding. And while that might be helpful, I don't know how much we have to pay to participate with that. It wasn't clear in the document. I think our description for getting the grant is misleading because we've all been told multiple times now and through the newspaper that our potable use will not be for many years and that it's really to help prevent saltwater intrusion, so it's not producing new water. I also thought it should be corrected that the Chora wells, which are referred to in the document, need to be corrected that we haven't used them for a number of years, and that needs to be known, and that the CEQA document, I think, is relevant and should have to be relevant in this case, and so I would encourage you not to vote for it, because getting this money causes drilling, and drilling is an EIR situation, an environmental situation. So I think that that's important. I want to go on to item number 7, which is about the historical and cultural grant that looking for from the Coastal Conservancy for the park down at Mother's Beach. And my concern is that there's nothing to look at, and so are we asking, are you giving staff permission to apply without a plan, or are they going to come back with a plan before they apply? It's unclear to me what we will get for that because there's no model. There's nothing saying what we'll get for the historical and cultural amenities, what that looks like. And then finally, on item number 8, this goes back to the document for getting the, what do I want to say? It has to do with the DSEL application that goes through similar organization as the previous item number 6, and that certainly that there are huge costs involved with this, and while it may seem like this is something that might benefit some of the other communities, I'm not sure that Morro Bay should be the one that picks up on this, even though there are other places and supposedly we're not being chosen out at this point, but I think that we are a likely candidate.
Thank you, Betty. Public comments open for consent agenda items. Anybody else? Seeing none. AGP, do we have anybody online or Zoom for consent input?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no raised hands in the queue.
Okay, I'll close public comment and bring it back to us. Is Greg, Mr. Qualick on the line, or did you want to take A6 question regarding the public works costs and then quote unquote the requirement for an EIR?
Yeah, I don't know if Greg is able to log in. The Zoom isn't functioning very well, so I don't know. How do we check that?
He is logged in. Let's see if we can hear him. Greg, are you
Mr.
on the line?
Qualick, are you there in Zoom land? Our Public Works Director. We'll give him a minute here. Dana, do you have him on the promoted?
Yeah, it's probably not working.
AGP, is Mr. Qualick with us?
He is with us, and his microphone just unmuted.
Okay, Mr. Qualick.
Yeah, not working. Well, Dan Heimel will respond to those questions.
Mr. Heimel, glad you're here. Dan, thank you. Regarding item A6.
Yes, Mayor Heading, members of the council. Regarding A6, to my knowledge, there is no ongoing fee to participate in the RWM program. There's only a fee to participate in the preparation of the grant application, and as outlined in the staff report, that's less than $10,000.
EIR requirement?
Yeah, so the CEQA exemption that's included in that agenda packet is only for the adoption of the plan. It is not for the implementation of the IPR program or the injection well program. that is covered under a completely separate CEQA process and an EIR that's already been certified.
Okay, great, thank you. Did you also want to address A7, or would that be, do we have Mr. Qualick on there? Regarding, quote unquote, are we submitting a application without a plan? Mr. Collins.
Sure. Yeah, not a full-fledged plan. We've been done some outreach to the community with regard to Coleman Beach in general, and then done some initial outreach to Shumash, Selenin, and the Filipino groups for collaboration on a larger scale than some of the stuff we have out there already. And so there seems to be a lot of interest. The Coastal Conservancy group has money, a lot of money to spend, and not a lot of projects that would qualify. This one would. We're figuring it's important to just go get the money, and then we can pull it together and work through the public process to help shape and define that. But largely, it's going to be driven by those stakeholder groups because it is for the cultural and historical aspects. So, but there will be a public process to bring that to fruition.
Great, thank you. And did you want to address the general concept plan for desal? And I know it's pretty obvious in the staff report, but for all of our listeners, the fact that I think the comment was we may not be appropriate for desal, and you might talk about the long-term nature of this and really what this is at this point.
Yeah, right now it's just an ability to get in early and see through initial phase one, which is no cost to the city or other participants. The county's bearing the cost. It's just to do an initial analysis to see what may be feasible at a broad level. And then there will be commitments that would need to be made after that. The city would be able to exit if it didn't feel advantageous to our community. The county's looking at this probably more on like a 20 to 30 year time horizon, and with the snowfalls decreasing significantly in the Sierras, which feeds the state water project, the county's thinking long term here that we may not have a state water project in the future. So this is a bet, basically a hedge on that. But there is no commitment of city money at this time, but city staff would be participating.
And this would be a very high-level look with routine reports brought back just for information for council.
Right, and council would need to make a decision at a later date if they want to continue to participate.
So the only cost is staff time engagement?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you for that. I think that answers all the questions, and any questions from staff or it's not staff, but for council? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of all but A5 on the consent agenda.
I'll move approval of all of the items except A5.
Okay. I'll second.
Do you have a motion to approve all consent items except for A5 and a second? And we'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. That brings us to our public hearing. We have one this evening, item B-1. It's adoption of ordinance number 655, repealing and reenacting multiple chapters of Title 14 of the City of Morro Bay Municipal Code, incorporating the 2022 California Building Standards Code as adopted by the State of California and local modifications thereto. The first reading occurred on 10/25. This is the second reading of the ordinance, and I'm turning it over, I believe, to Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
This is, we're proposing a second reading of Ordinance 655 this evening. This would adopt the California Building Code. It goes into effect regardless of what happens this evening. It's just the local amendments that don't unless they're approved and moved forward. So that's why we're here. We did bring forward the first reading on October 25th. Council passed that through. There were no changes made to the ordinance at that time, so we have the second reading in front of you this evening, and it's staff recommendation that council adopt by second reading and by title only with further reading waived, ordinance number 655. And that ends my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that in-depth presentation. We appreciate that. I'll open up council questions first. Any questions from council on B1? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing and open up public comment. And a public comment for item B1 is open. And Betty, welcome back.
Thank you. Betty Winholtz and I have 3 questions, and I think they're all local ones. The first one has to do with the burning prohibiting bonfires and recreational fires, whether this applies to the 2 state parks within our city limits or not, Morro Bay State Park and the Strand, because I know that people who live in the Atascadero Beach Track often complain about the smoke coming up, and I didn't know if this was banning those fires down there or not. Second, I want to be concerned about the fireworks and the Safe and Sane that was approved about 10 years ago, and this is an opportunity to ban those. So I'd like to see you do that. And then there has been discussion about whether new buildings or remodel buildings have to go all electric, and or at least have the option for that. And I know that came up in some document. I don't know if it was the zoning ordinance or if it's in this. And so my question is it part of this? And if so, is there a way to make that optional? Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Public comment for item B1 is still open. Anybody else? Seeing none, AGP, do we have any public comment via Zoom or online?
Mayor, I see no raised hands.
Okay, I will close public comment, close the public hearing, bring it back to council. Mr. Graham, just 3 quick questions, good ones by Ms. Winholtz. Bonfire prohibition, do we know if it includes state parks?
The bonfire prohibition is one of our local amendments, and I'd have to look at the section to see exactly what it says. It's a, I don't mean to point someone out, but it's a fire add-on. So the specifics of it are not something I administer to.
Should we look to Chief McRae for that? Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Chief, welcome.
So the exemptions in this allow for fires that are in commercially made fire pits, things like that, as long as they use wood, propane, natural gas, things like that. We did not make any changes during this code adoption, and the ones that are in state parks are existing, non-conforming. They wouldn't be allowed to be built today, but because they're already there, when we do have red flag conditions, they do shut down the burning to limit the fire risk, and state parks does manage the fuels around them to minimize the fire risk.
Great. Thank you, Chief, for that clarification. I appreciate it. Fireworks, no changes, assume to that, correct?
No changes.
Yeah. Okay, and then remind us, I know we talked a little bit about the all-electric issue. Could you just update us again?
Certainly. So one of the initiatives staff was looking at was the development of an electrification code that would be applied to residential development in the city. We did some outreach to the community, received a lot of concern about what that might mean, and so the original intent was to incorporate that electrification code into the code adoption, but we realized that we were going to need to do some more outreach and education for the community, so we pulled that back. So that is not included in the code. The code does have several, things that are related to that, meaning equipping new houses with the infrastructure necessary to support solar and batteries and those types of things. But the city did not put any local amendments in place to move forward the electrification concept. We're still in the process of working on educational opportunities with the community. And the most recent one will probably have a meeting or webinar where we provide some additional information related to this as we move forward, and that's probably happening after the first of the year.
Good. Thank you for answering those questions. I appreciate it. Any further discussion from council on this item?
Just that I appreciate staff, the time that you took to, and those who worked on this project. And if anyone here missed the first reading, I commented that I'm glad that we're holding off on the all electric for now, because it's important. Hearing back from our community, there's a lot of work to be done on that particular item. So not moving forward with that is important. So Yeah, that's all I have
Thank
to say.
you, Councilmember. And again, I thank staff for the work that you've done in getting this back to us. I'll go ahead and recommend the City Council adopt by second reading and by title only with further reading waived, ordinance number 655, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay, California, repealing, amending, and reenacting chapters 14.01 through 14.12 of Title 14 of Morro Bay Municipal Code, thereby adopting by reference and amending the 2022 California Building, Volumes 1 and 2, residential, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, energy, historical building, fire, existing building, green building, administrative and reference standard codes, the 2021 International Property Maintenance Code, and the 1997 Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Buildings. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we have a motion for the staff recommendation and a second? Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much.
And Mayor?
Yes.
Could we please take about a 10-minute break to allow AGP to test some of the technology fixes that they've been working on?
Sure. We go ahead and take a 7
Thank
to 8
you.
minute break. You bet. Absolutely. We'll be back at 6:43 and a half. How's that? Okay, we are back. Thank you. That brings us to our first business item this evening, and this is approval of the WRF contract amendments and review and comment on fiscal year 22-23 quarter one WRF quarterly report. Mr. Amico, welcome.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, community members. Councilmember Addis, again, congratulations on your next role. I'm sure you'll do great there, and it'll be, we'll miss you. Thank you. So tonight is the presentation, discussion of the quarterly report, and then also discussion on three contract amendments for the water reclamation facility. As I always like to do, I would like to give a construction update first before we get into the quarterly report. I'll try to keep my presentation concise. We had quite a lengthy discussion at PWAB the other night, so I'll try to keep it concise and then just open it up for your questions at the end. So I'll keep it a pretty high level. It's always interesting, as I always say, when we do these quarterly reports, because we try to consolidate all the WRF business around the quarterly report. So we're talking about things that happened about 6 or 8 weeks ago. It's been quite a substantial couple months that we've had with the WRF and with the conveyance project. So as you can see, the pump stations are starting to look like pump stations. The conveyance facilities are starting to look like conveyance facilities, meaning we're going to bury them in the ground and not look at them anymore. So you can see here, this is the tie-in of the conveyance facilities at the water reclamation facility. That's the one on the left. And then the picture on the right is the last water main that needed to be relocated to make room for the IPR along Quintana, the purified water line. The pipe bridge, anybody who drives along and gets on Highway 1 and goes along can see the pipe bridge. It dwarfs the pedestrian bridge that's there. So the pipe bridge has come out of the ground and been completed. And the WRF was completed, and we started pumping wastewater on October 11th. Big milestone for the project team. We wanted to be ready on October 4th. As things go, if anybody's ever renovated a house or done any sort of construction, you always know that about 90% of the effort occurs in the last 10% of the job, and there's a million little details that need to be kept track of. And so the week of the 4th, that was a date that we had worked together with Anvil, the program team, and FPV to determine, and we made it. But then around October 4th, 5th, 6th, again, the million little details that come with these, I sat down with plant staff, Damaris and Mike Wenzel, and we made the hard decision to wait another week. And so, because what we didn't want to do after the operations staff, who I've said time and time again are some of the finest, that's one of the finest teams I've ever worked with. The guys were exhausted. They were heading into a weekend, and you know, you learn a lot of things when you do these things. One, you never order seed sludge on a Monday. I think that was one of the first lessons, and the second one is you never start up a treatment plant on a Thursday. So we made the hard decision to move to the next week and get the plant started up. I'm aware that there's been some discussions around that startup, and no, it did not necessarily go well in that first week. So we, again, made the hard decision as a team to put the plug back in down at the old wastewater plant and send flow back to the old wastewater plant so the team could regroup and restart the startup of the plant. What the real issue was that because of that 1 week time frame, the decision we made, that hard decision we made, wastewater plants are living creatures. They are like sourdough starters. So we got a seed, we got the sourdough starter from Paso, brought it over. You have to keep that alive, and the ideal condition for your sourdough starter in this case is to make sourdough, and we didn't do it. We were trucking wastewater from the old plant to try to keep that going, and then at the end of the day, we just didn't have enough bugs, enough biomass to really sustain that. And there were some things that had that the operations staff in Fielance Black and Veatch didn't like that they were seeing in that, and they were concerned that the plant was not going to perform as it needed to, that the bugs weren't ready to go, and we were going to lose control of that process. Very fortunate for the city of Morro Bay, you have an old treatment plant to go to. It isn't like we went and built a treatment plant out in the middle of a field and that was it, and it was all going and that was it. So over the last month or so, plant staff and FBV have been working very, very closely together to troubleshoot all, again, the million little details that are present in this. And we are now, as of last week, sending flow 24/7 to the new facility. It is not operating at 100%, but we are producing very, very good effluent. It exceeds the performance that was originally established in the permit and what is required by permit. And a facility of this design and a facility of this sophistication just takes a lot of effort to do that. FBV and plant staff continue to work cooperatively, and we have a long list of things that they have to complete. And then we will turn our attention, once the wastewater process in the city staff is satisfied that they can operate that, they'll turn their attention to the purified water component of the plant, the advanced purification component, and start up the drinking water component. So that's the construction update, and big milestones. I couldn't be more pleased with the team and everyone. We all have our tense moments. We get short with each other, and we do that, but at the end of the day, we're still, it's a good team, it's a good group of people, and there isn't anybody on that team that doesn't care a lot about what they're doing. So very pleased at how it's gone so far. Not perfect, but we can't always get perfect, right? So I know there's one element that everybody's been concerned about, and I will be the first to admit my embarrassment about being the person that said that we should put September 30th on the bike path open signs. That was me being overly optimistic, and sometimes an overly optimistic project manager is not the best project manager, but nonetheless, we did not hit that deadline, and that's very unfortunate. But we do have a landscape plan that's been on the website for quite some time. We've retained a local landscape architect to come up with that landscape plan to take advantage of the 70 feet that the city got from PG&E and Vistra to open up the bike path and to make it a safer bike path, I'd heard some people describe it as creepy bike path, and it was subject to flooding and at times was unsafe. And so the bike path has been regraded. We're focused very much on getting that and correcting some of the conditions that would inundate the bike path and flood it. And so we do have a landscape plan. It is not 100% complete yet because we have a situation that I did want to discuss with you all right now, which is grading and then ultimately paving are going to be underway here soon. Meeting with City Public Works, Eric Radio and Greg, we decided that the best thing to do would be to put the paving back in where it originally was, to push it over toward Highway 1 just like it was before. Because we have a future phase of construction, which is the IPR wells, and the purified water line that go up there, we need to keep that lane. We decided we needed to keep that lane open because even though we had acquired land all the way to Embarcadero from Vistra, in consultation and as we looked harder at that, it would be very, very difficult to build it from only one direction. So we decided that the best thing to do would be to use the west side of that easement for future construction corridor to get that done, have that contractor do the final full restoration of the bike path and do a partial restoration, so that during that construction, the project manager doesn't have to be embarrassed and say that the bike path is being closed again. So we are optimistic that we can put up, we're planning on putting up temporary fencing during that construction, and then anytime when in places where the bike path pinches down, we would flag pedestrian and bike traffic. So more details will come on that final restoration and that full restoration. We kind of hit pause on the plan because of this, and so we will be coming forward with a detailed plan in the future. We're working on that right now.
Paul, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I noticed the paving, I think that was yesterday, out there paving. So as we look at the picture that's up here, then we are looking actually at that paving or the
That's a
west
sketch.
side?
One of our engineers just drew that in there on the PDF. So
Right, but, okay, so
it's approximately where it's going to go.
it's the side that's closest to the highway is what I was seeing.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
great.
correct.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So glad to answer any further questions about the bike path when we get to that point, either in public comment or in council questions. Let's see. So that was our construction update. Quarterly report, standard approach that we normally do. We got the financial reports from the city so that we could pull this together. Again, we appreciate Councilmember Heller and Mayor Heading, your work with us in the past to make this a much more streamlined and much more pleasant report to create, much easier to check, much easier to edit. Again, won't necessarily go through a lot of details on that. We did submit it at the beginning of the month. Total spending through FY 2023 is just shy of $120 million against a approved budget of $159.8. And we discuss accomplishments, challenges, and upcoming activities, which I largely covered in the construction update. And so we provided the schedule that shows, and so in the next quarterly report update, which you'll see in February timeframe, because it generally takes us about 6 weeks to do that. The council then will see the actualization of the plant startup, and then we will begin at that point to be focused on getting these construction contracts closed out and getting the contractors demobilized. So, any questions on the quarterly report before I go? Or do we just want to take them all at the end? Okay. Okay, so three contract amendments. The first one, Cogstone, you all had approved. This is their third amendment. I thought it was their second amendment. Maybe it's their third. Anyway, we've amended their contract before for Native American and cultural resource monitoring. They do the lion's share of the work along the conveyance facilities. As we've pushed and pushed and pushed to get to that October 4th date, Anvil was working in multiple places, and so we needed more Native American monitors than we had originally anticipated, even based on their dig days and on the different things, just because of the amount that they were jumping around in different places that they were going. We were optimistic that in places we could use one monitor for 2 different excavations, and that just wasn't safe for them, and it wasn't good for the detailed monitoring that they needed to do. Consequently, we need to amend their contract for an additional $97,000, just roughly shy of $100,000, in order to complete the project. Had long talks with Cogstone about this, we're done. We're done, and this will close us out, and they've assured us that that's the case. I do want to note that future IPR construction is not included in this. That will be a separate and distinct, a whole other process related to what needs to happen on IPR construction and that pipeline. Anvil Builders Amendment number 6. There are 12 items on this. Again, went through these in great detail the other night, but so I'm going to hit these from a really high level. PCOs 26, 31, 37, 55, and 68 are all driven by unforeseen or changed conditions that occurred during construction. In that particular of those, the RO water line, big ticket item there on that one, in that particular one, just as an example, this was a case where over by McDonald's, we encountered what's called a thrust block, big concrete block where pipes make bends. They need to be held in place. Much, much bigger. Did not anticipate, did not expect that, would never have even gone looking for it, and they found it. They thought that we could get away with just a few dozen feet of relocation, and ended up being several hundred feet. So that's why in this particular case, this is such a high number in this case. So those total about $187,000 of the 646. PCOs 35 and 36 are regulatory driven. This is the between the Division of Drinking Water and the regional board. These are two changes that had occurred during construction, which is unfortunate because we are in construction. The DDW initiated realignments. This is between the roundabout and Forever Stoked. There were a number of different places where DDW, even after design, once we report to them, the water lines were too close to our joint trench, so we either had to raise them, we had to sleeve them, we had to do a bunch of different work on that. And then the 36, which is or 35, excuse me, which is the brine line discharge. This was an issue I think I had talked to you all about in the past, where the regional board wouldn't let us continue to discharge the reject water from the brackish RO facility down by the old plant to the old power plant outfall. So when the city got the new permit for the new WRF, they said, hey, you got to put that all in there. So these changes were at Pump Station A, so we don't have to go back in there and jackhammer pavement that we just placed. So anything that crossed Pump Station A site needed to be realigned and reconfigured in that area so that we're in there once and we're done. And then the actual outfall box needed to be modified as well. So that's what this work is. Those total about $283,000 of the regulatory driven ones. And then the remainder of these, 45, 53, 57, 58, and 59 are design changes that occurred during construction. So this would be in cases where Anvil may come back and ask the designer for clarification around something, or what do you want us to do here? The designer looks at it and realizes that the bid documents weren't, either didn't cover it, absolutely everything they needed to know, or it was just a change that was driven by differing conditions that they didn't know during design. So in spite of all our best efforts to do surveys and do all the things, we can't see every square inch of the project because much of it's underground. So that's what these do. And that totals $178,000 roughly. So those are, I know I went through those really quickly, so again, if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer those. On the FBV amendment number 8, 3 of these had come back. I actually pulled 3 of these before the last council meeting because I'd gotten some information late in the game that didn't make me comfortable coming in front of you to recommend these. This has come back. Do recommend these for approval now. The one I do want to talk about is number 108. So if you recall, for quite some time, we've been talking about the delay between the pipelines and the WRF startup. That's been the crux of everything we've been doing up to this point, has been dealing with that over the last several months. Back in June, council approved a $1.5 million budget for that we had not seen any substantiating documentation from FBV that it was going to go that high. It was just them saying this could be that high, some rough numbers. Through some long and arduous and sometimes frustrating negotiations with them, we've negotiated that to $750,000 within that $1.5 million budget. That $750,000 pays FBV what we call extended overhead. So when you lengthen a contractor's schedule, that means that's the cost of doing business. It's the cost of their bonds and insurance and the cost of money, because they have to borrow money in order to float a lot of the costs through the project. So we've negotiated that down to $750,000. We had some disagreements about what should have been done when and all these different things, and I won't go into the painful details, but that's where we landed with them on that. So with that total guaranteed maximum price increase this round of $957,418. Overall fiscal impact, as you can see, we included this table. We felt like this was a lot clearer way to present this, and what this shows here is that we have about $1.1 million left in the WRF line item in the budget that was approved. And unfortunately, as you can see, with both Cogstone's budget that we had originally done and also with Anvil's, that we are over budget on those line items, which is why we had allocated program contingency. And so we've pulled that from program contingency up, and I believe the staff report said that after these, we cover these contingencies, we have about 600 and change in contingency remaining in the program contingency line item. So I know I went through that very quick. So with that, I will gladly take your questions.
Paul, thank you. And thanks to staff for working really hard through the last 30-plus days to get the plant almost up and running 100%. I know we were out there and visited and saw the great work that was being done by our people. And so please extend our thanks to them and to you and your staff for the great job that you've done to make this happen. We appreciate it very much. I'm going to open it up for council questions first of all. Any to my left? Councilmember Ford? Questions?
I do.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
Most of my questions were covered by your report, but however, I do have 2 questions for you. One is going back to when you covered the bike path, the plan, and how you'll lay the path where it used to be to avoid having to tear it up again. So can you just clarify for me, and you may have said this and I apologize, but what happens when the IPR work is done and there's no more construction going on and we go back to finish the bike path? Can you walk me through what you anticipate that will look like? Will we then involve the community at all in that plan, or is that purely our landscape architect's job, or are we going to expand the bike path? Sorry, I know you're like about to answer and then I start talking.
No, it's all good. So
are we going to change the path at all, or is the path just, that's where it will stay and we're just landscaping it from that point on?
Those are great questions. And the thing I would say about this in particular is we have the luxury of time at this point now, which is the remainder of the bike path. I would not advise that you go tear up asphalt that's been there. But one of the things that we can do now is to get a plan that incorporates what we have here and then looks at what the dividing line would be, what would be restored by Anvil, and then what would be future. So that's just a plan at this point. And so that means that during the design of the IPR, the rest of the injection wells and the IPR pipeline, there can be more community conversation about how that's restored. And so it's not a done deal. It's not a slam dunk. And I would say that other side of the bike path might give you an opportunity to put, a wild idea, and I'm not a landscape architect, might be put pedestrians over there and let the bikers on their electric bikes come flying down the asphalt path. And so that's why the landscape architects are involved. The tree selection, the spacing, all that, it's a good start. And so if through this process you ask us, because the restoration, the actual tree planting and restoration may not occur for a few months yet, because Anvil has a lot of other work to do, they're going to come back to me, and if you all say, hey, tap the brakes a little bit, we'd like to see tree plant, spacing and that, and have them do that, we will gladly do that. Which is why we wanted FIRMA to start working on this now that we had this direction where we're going to put the asphalt path back there. Now they have something more tangible to work from than a blank slate, if you would. So hopefully that answers your question.
I think it pretty much does. Thank you. And I understand that, it's still in planning stages. And then you did touch on, now I'm going to the item descriptions. 108, when you were talking about the deferring seed plant milestone in the WRF Commission for $750,000, can you just walk me through that one more time?
Sure.
I know you did go through it, but just for my comprehension, do you mind going over
Yes.
that one
Yes.
more time for me.
So again, starting back from budgeting time, we originally put a $1.5 million line item allocation for that, knowing that there was going to be a more detailed negotiation with Freelance Black and Veatch from that point. And so what they provided to us was it ends up being staff time. It ends up being, because what we did, and I guess I'll step back one thing, is when you step in and scramble a contractor's work plan and their work program and the way that they have laid out and they've bid the work, it automatically exposes you to claims. There's just no way, because the contractor's going to come back and say, that is not how I planned the work. This guy over here, we were expecting to have him finish his work and then cut him loose. You've now said that that work needs to happen 2 months from now, so I don't want to lose that guy. So there's a lot of that trading that goes on internally with them. And so it was staff time. It was extension of builder's risk insurance. It was the cost of money, them extending their bond coverage for the project, and a handful of other items that they felt they were entitled to, and they really were entitled to, because we did delay them. Now, where we really negotiated on that was, what was that delay? How long was it really? Because we agreed on a date originally, and then that was early July, and we said we were going to get them sewage in early October. So it's about a 3-month delay. Well, they had about a month of work that they needed to accomplish before that October 1st. So I said, well, you're in 2-month delay. Well, what they said was, no, it's actually, originally we were supposed to be done in July, and now you're telling us that we're not going to be done until December, which is 6 months. So that was really what it was. That's sort of the accordion that we had to play with in terms of that delay cost. So as I said, so it's a various categories of just doing business and being in the contracting business.
Thank you for clarifying that for me one more time.
No problem.
I appreciate it. That's the only questions that I have for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Addis, any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I know there's a lot of hard news here, but I also want to say congratulations for getting as far as we've gotten. I'm super excited that it's this close at my last meeting. So thank you to you and the team for that.
Thank you.
Great. Hey, thanks, Paul. I want to just go back again to PCO 107, and I know Councilmember Heller and I talked with you and staff at our subcommittee meeting, but you unpacked for Councilmember Ford the essence of what the costs were that were negotiated and had to be paid. I'm getting bitten here by the bug here. By the costs that were borne that had to be paid by Freelance Black and Veatch. But can you, just for the purposes of the audience and folks that are watching or the community, remind us what the delay issues were that prompted the inability to meet the original schedule? I think we owe it to the public just to acknowledge that. Would you mind?
Glad to do it. Glad to do it. So, this is always hard to, where do you start this? When the pipeline project was originally scheduled, it got a slower start than anticipated, and then we had kind of a false start. Right, and the slower start was driven largely by the cultural resource investigation that needed to happen. So you have to progress the design to a very high level, because when you're dealing with buried cultural resources, inches and feet matter. And so I don't know that the project team really, at the time we scheduled the work, comprehended the level of effort that Far Western was going to have to go through to, one, complete this, and they did a great job completing it within what was a pretty aggressive schedule at the time. And then once we send that out, we lose control of it. So we had 2 agencies, one a federal agency, one a state agency, that had to review the findings of that cultural resource investigation. We attempted to get Anvil going first, and we had to do a full ground stop. SHPO stopped in and said, the State Historic Preservation Office said, wait a minute, we haven't, even though the most of the resources are along the bike path down in Lila Kaiser Park, we haven't approved you anywhere to work. And so we had to stop them. There was an item that had come to council early when I returned back to the program, where we settled that with Anvil. It was $443,000 in about 35 days for that restart. That 35 days then sort of expanded into the project, and it wasn't 35 days anymore because we were not completely cleared to work everywhere. They had us, we could not work from roughly 100 feet south of the pipe bridge, and then north of the pipe bridge. We couldn't work in that area. We were not cleared by SHPO to work in that area. They released us for the rest of it, and then we went through a process of 6 to 8 months working with SHPO and EPA to try to get that area cleared. We had to do a lot of back and forth with them. Far Western was fantastic in dealing with this. Is what they do every day. And so we were not cleared to begin the pipe bridge until, in that area at all, until January. That's when we set the seed sludge date. And, you know, one might say we're either, you know, there's a fine line between being crazy and being stupid, right? Or being bold and being stupid. But we had to pick a date at that point. And we, through looking at the schedule, working together with Anvil and FBV, that's how we came up with that October date. So it really was driven by factors that were completely out of the city's control in terms of getting state and federal agencies to, one, communicate, and then two, to actually, they're not obligated to respond in a timely manner. Only once we said we really do need to, they are obligated in some ways, but we were maybe a little too casual with that. And then once EPA kind of stepped in and became more firm with them and said, no, we need your concurrence that when we send you something, it's a 7-day turnaround and we're going to get it. If we don't hear in 7 days, we're going to keep going. So those are some of the gory details around what we had to deal with, but it was really largely driven by EPA and the State Historic Preservation Office.
Okay, good. I thank you for that explanation. That's a large number. Congratulations on negotiating it down to half of what you expected. I think that's to be you know, applauded, but I wanted the community to hear the essentials behind the 750, so thank you for that.
May I just say one thing?
Sure.
And when you said that, it makes me think of this. There are 2 other buckets that we are in discussions with FBV on. Remember, I said we held them 1 week. So they're going to come, they've submitted pricing, we're still negotiating that pricing. Do we really agree with what number they gave us? So that 1 week they are entitled to, because we did hold them up. And we all agreed, and that was a hard decision that was made by the program in the city to do that. Now there's this third bucket that we keep saying, which is the restart. That is where those will be the gory details that we will be ironing out with them over the next several months. What happened? Why did we do that? Was it necessary? So on and so forth. So I just want to be clear that there will be additional discussions with council on those 2 other buckets.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Barton, do you have questions?
I don't have any questions, but as I'm listening to this, it's sort of a deja vu thing. I spent years and years working in the engineering department of a city, responsible for getting the grants to pay for a lot of this stuff. And so it's, as I'm listening, I'm just, you know, cycling through the kinds of considerations, and it's so complex. And so I'm just delighted that it's you handling it and not me. But it's, you know, but I am so pleased how this has all turned out, because there were times when it just felt like, oh my gosh, we're never going to get there.
Right.
And it's much smoother now. Thank you so much.
I feel that same way.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open up public comment. This is public comment for item C-1 on the agenda. Any member of the public present that would like to speak, please come forward now. Welcome.
Judy Setting, Morro Bay resident. I'm surprised at this. I just heard gaslighting. Oh, hey, we thought it was going to be $150 million. But guess what? I got them down to $750. You guys, taxpayers are having to pay for these mistakes, this lack of wanting perfection. Yes, when there are bugs involved, we want perfection. We want that treated perfectly. That's what we want. That's what we expect. And the fact that this is so far over budget is so very sad. And I wish you guys could really hear what I just heard. Okay, I think I heard something about we couldn't see the pipes underground. Did I hear that? Did I hear somebody say that?
Yeah, could you speak to the council, please? Thank you.
Well, my husband built the Black Hill Villas over there by the sewer plant. And I remember him telling me of a company they hired that uses satellite. And they can see all of the pipes underground. Do your research, please. You're dealing with taxpayers and the amount of money that they cannot pay in our city. They've lived here for a long time. They want to stay here. They want their families to live here. Please pay attention.
Thank you. Public comment still open. Any member of the public wishing to come forward, please do so. Welcome, Betty.
Betty Winholtz, amen to that. I was under the impression, still talking about the bike path, that the public was going to have input into that. I thought we were promised that, and it doesn't sound like that's on schedule for us to be involved, so I'm putting it out there that we do want to be involved with that, that we feel like we're owed that. It's our trail that was destroyed, and we would like to see how that's going to be redone, whether it's on the west side or the east side or both. I'd like to know, that's number one. This is according to the email that I sent you. Number two had to do with Mr. Heimel. I'd like to know why it's not a conflict of interest that he works for both Los Osos and Morro Bay in water, and how that is that he can negotiate that, and maybe there's a reason, and that's why I'm asking, because maybe it's not a conflict. I'd like to know if special conditions from our coastal development permit, number 3, 5, and 7, have been completed, because they were supposed to be completed by the time that we operate this plant. And so is that a yes, that those items have been taken care of? The startup, it's my understanding, again, please correct me, that this plant is not the Morro Bay City's plant until we receive it, because it's working 100%. So this problem with the startup and other things, I don't know why we're paying for that if it's still owned by Black and Veatch. And so if you can clarify how that works, because it doesn't seem right, like the previous speaker, that we should be paying for some things that are under someone else's control.
Thank you. Public comment still open for item, what are we on, C-1. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. Linda Donnelly, resident of Morro Bay. So, a couple of things before I start on with special conditions. So there's a stop sign that is supposed to be like in its proper place at the corner of Quintana and Las Tunas. And frankly, right now, it's been an A-frame for months. I mean, they finally opened up that corner so we could get into our community, and it's an A-frame. I think it's supposed to be on a big post, though, you know, at the top, and say stop. Also, it really perplexes me how Black and Veatch could say that they were delayed when they hadn't even received their membranes yet. They were still waiting on the membranes. So until they had the membranes, they couldn't start the plant up anyway. This is not just, I'm not just making this up, it's what was said by Mr. Amico in one of the last quarterly reports. Okay, so standard of care, in my view, was not followed. So this 14-page document, coastal development permit, it's on the city's website. I was there in July when the Coastal Commission actually met. Item number 3, these are special conditions. Item number 3 is the riparian plan prior to operation of the WRF, and this is all in capital letters from the Coastal Commission. The permittee shall submit 2 copies of a repair enhancement plan to the executive director for review and approval. And it goes on and on. So then, number 5 is the agricultural mitigation program. Prior to operation of the WRF, again in capital letters, and if I'm hearing the city staff correctly, they're saying that the WRF is started. The permittee shall submit an agricultural mitigation program to the executive director for review and approval. The program shall specify the measures to be taken to mitigate the project agricultural impacts by providing an agricultural conservation easement. And it goes on, but it does say that the easement must cover at least 30 acres of such agricultural plan. And when there's mitigations like this, and you have 30 acres that you need to mitigate for, somewhere else the city needs to find 30 acres to mitigate on that. Condition number 7 is the wastewater treatment plant removal and restoration plan prior to operation of the WRF again.
Thank you, Linda.
So I just ask you to please pull this down off the website and read it.
Thank you. Public comment still open on item C-1. Any others? Seeing none. AGP, do we have any hands up for public comment on Zoom?
Mayor, we have no hands raised.
Okay. I'll close public comment, bring it back. Paul or Dan or both or city staff, just a couple questions to answer. Public involvement regarding the bike path, is there a process for input? Perhaps that's Mr. Collins' question?
I think under this temporary circumstance, we're going to move forward as is, but then definitely when we get into the final plan, definitely we'll go through PWAB and City Council.
PWAB and City Council, okay. Chris, is there any conflict of interest with regard to Mr. Heimel working for Morro Bay and Los Osos?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any conflicts, but I can review the matter more to confirm that.
Okay, thank you. There is an email that Ms. Weinholz submitted that does outline specifically the issue, so perhaps check that and respond to that. And then who wants to answer the CDP issue that both Linda and Betty brought up regarding conditions 5, 3, and 7 being met? Mr. Heimel, thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that. So city staff and the program team are in close communication with Coastal Commission staff with regards to the compliance of those special conditions and the definition of operation of the wharf, and we'll bring back conclusive information as that becomes available through the ongoing discussions with Coastal Commission staff.
So they are aware, basically, you're discussing it with them, and the plant is not operational fully yet, is what we're saying, and that would be...
Correct. Yeah, so Coastal Commission staff is fully appraised of the current status of the project, as well as the status of the operation of the wharf. And, you know, while certain components of the wharf are operating, there are numerous other components that still need to be commissioned, started up, and proved out, and Coastal Commission staff is understanding of those additional steps that need to be taken and accounting for that in the definition of operation of the wharf.
Okay. And do we know anything, and maybe this is a Paul question, regarding the stop sign at Quintana and Las Tunas?
I'm not aware of that specifically, but what I do know is we're walking right now we're painting paving limits. We're looking at broken curbs that they that Anvil needed to fix, and they're going through that. It's on the punch list. I don't know.
We do have it on the list.
Yeah, it's on the list. Yeah.
Okay. And then any requirement, I'm not sure, I know we have different kinds of membranes for filtration, but quote unquote, the comment about the membranes being, you heard the comment about
I did.
Before startup. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, membranes are, they need to be kept wet. They need to be, you can't order them too far in advance from that. So that was one of the things that needed to get adjusted. And that's why it was so critical for us to pick a day when the pipelines would be ready. Because if we order them too soon, then the city has to store them, the warranty starts, there's a lot of things that go into that. So that was one of the items that we had FBV hold on, and then they got from us in writing that we were going to be ready, and so they ordered the membranes and got them installed.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers the questions. I'll bring it back to council for further discussion and or recommendation. Comments or thoughts?
So what I gather from this is, you know, especially Mayor, since you had us walk through the reasons for delays and whatnot, it seems like one thing leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. And it's my understanding that, you know, according to the report, this does not raise our water rates, correct? Yes. Yes, okay. So we're not raising our rates. We still have money in the contingency fund. And we need to get this done. So I'm in support of this item tonight. And I just want to remind our citizens that there are many more hoops to jump through because of the type of loan, the WIFIA loan that we secured. But with that loan, we're saving a significant amount of money. And I know, Mayor, you're always good at spouting out the accurate numbers, and I'm really bad at that. So, but we're saving a significant amount of money by having to jump through all these hoops, and with that comes more costs. It does look like we're spending a lot more money, which we are, but at the same time, we're saving money in the long run because of the interest rate. So I think we have to be reminded of that as well. So I just want to say that's, you know, I'm in support tonight for that reason, and I appreciate the clarification that I got this evening on the questions that I had.
Would you like to make the motion?
Oh, sure.
In the staff report?
Yeah, sorry.
Need a copy?
No, I think I have it here. Okay. So I'd like to move that we approve staff's recommendation. Let's see here. I guess I read the whole entire thing, huh? For all three numbers?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let's see here. To provide input, review and provide input for the fiscal year 2022-23 first quarter WRF quarterly report, and authorize the city manager to execute the following water reclamation facility contract amendments. Number 1, amendment number 6 to the agreement with Anvil Builders, Inc., Anvil, for the wharf lift stations and off-site pipelines construction for $646,763, which results in a total not to exceed contract value for Anvil of $34,843,344. Number 2, amendment number 8 to the agreement with Feelonk Black and Beach for the water reclamation facility construction project for $957,418, which increases the guaranteed maximum price, GMP, to $78,015,298. And number 3, amendment number 3, to the agreement with Cogstone Resource Management for cultural resources monitoring services during construction of the WRF lift station and offsite pipelines for a total amount of $97,535.90, resulting in a total not to exceed amount of $1,493,527.12.
Make one correction to your motion. That's $97,535.90.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. That's okay. Just wanted to make sure. Amended, okay?
Yes.
That amendment, okay?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'd like to second that.
Okay, we do have a motion for staff recommendation and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, that brings us to item C-2. This is adoption of ordinance 654, amendments to Morro Bay Municipal Code, repealing Title 17 and replacing with adoption of zoning code, coastal implementation plan, IP, and associated waterfront master plan, and municipal code amendments. The first reading did occur on 10/25. This would be the second reading. Turn it over to you again, Mr. Graham. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. As was indicated in the description that you provided, this item was before the City Council on October 25th, where you conducted the first reading of Ordinance 654 for adoption of the city's comprehensive update to its zoning code. And then there are also several other amendments to Morro Bay Municipal Code sections, mostly just changing the section references in those areas to reflect the new and updated code. The City Council did accept the Planning Commission's recommendation with one change. The City Council directed that we change the height limit down Morro Bay Boulevard and then north on Main Street to Beach from 30 feet to 37 feet. Those changes have been made and are reflected in the code before you this evening. We did receive some correspondence from Ms. Winholtz on this. She asked several questions, and I thought I might go ahead and address them now and maybe save.
Please do, yes.
Ms. Winholtz a little time. Starting with the first one, Ms. Winholtz asks whether we're increasing height in our residential zones to 30 feet. We are not. Height in most of the residential zones will remain at 25 feet. What we did do, which is the same policy that exists in the current code, is it limits height of walls, a single wall plane, to 30 feet. This addresses sloped lots. We have multiple homes in town that have wall planes that exceed 30 feet in height while still complying with the 25 feet from average natural grade. It's how the house steps up the slope. So that policy remains unchanged. There's a second question here. Are we increasing the height on the Embarcadero from 14 feet to 17 feet? The height requirement related to Embarcadero development remains the same as it does in the current code. We haven't changed any of that. You would be 14 feet for flat roof buildings, 17 feet for buildings with 4 and 12 pitch roofs, and you can go up to 25 feet if you provide extra public benefit in your project. So those should sound at least somewhat familiar to you, given that you've seen multiple projects down on the waterfront. Let's see. There's a question about eliminating parking in lieu fees for the Embarcadero. What we've done is eliminated the parking requirement on the Embarcadero. Idea is to pull cars off of the Embarcadero, not have them on the lease sites. Let's see, a question about potential change in our compact parking space requirement. Says for parking of 4 or more vehicles, you can have up to 25% of those spaces be compact spaces, which would measure 8.5 by 18 feet. Policy remains exactly as it is in the current code. No changes. Question about chain link fencing and eliminating it from residential districts. Current code doesn't allow them in residential districts. You can't have chain link fences. Ms. Winholtz goes on to ask, if we were remodeling a house, then would you be required to replace it? The answer to that would depend on the extent of the remodel. If you're, say, demolishing a house and putting a new one there, then we would require that fencing be removed, as an example. There's the same question related to concrete blocks. We did change the policy related to concrete block fences. If you have plain concrete block wall that you're proposing or building, the requirement is that be a finished material. Either you have a decorative concrete block that you're using, or you have it covered in stucco with a decorative cap on top of it, so it's not just a plain block wall. There's a question about, have we increased the size of the accessory dwelling units? We don't have an accessory dwelling unit ordinance. We default to the state ADU law, but the policy in the proposed zoning code in front of you this evening is 1,000 square foot maximum for 1-bedroom and studio units, and 1,200 for 2-bedroom detached ADUs. I will say that rarely do we ever see ADUs that are that large, because most of our lots in town are very small and wouldn't accommodate structures of that size, but it does allow ADUs to go up to that level for larger lots. There is an inquiry from Ms. Winholtz about our tree replacement policy and noticing requirements. from Chapter 12.08.080 of the Morro Bay Municipal Code. We're not changing any of the policy language there. The only thing we're changing is the reference to the zoning code section for noticing. That's it. This really deals with replacements or removal of trees in the right-of-way and the ability for the public to appeal those decisions that are made by our Public Works Director, who's not here today, or in the building. So really, again, no changes other than the reference to correct to provide the correct noticing requirements out of the zoning code that are referenced in the current code now. Let's see, what else? Question about are hotels, hosted or otherwise, restricted from residential zones? The answer to the question is yes. We do allow them, and the new code does allow them in our neighborhood commercial, central commercial, visitor serving commercial, and transitional mixed use areas, and then prohibits them in the district commercial areas. Let's see, last item looks like she was unable to identify a reference to Measure D. Measure D is identified in the city's general plan, it's discussed at length there, and it also is discussed under the CF zoning classification in the zoning code, which I think is on page 83. That was the last of the questions that I had from Ms. Winholtz. I'm sure she has others. She'll state them when the public comment period is opened. Other than that, staff is recommending council adopt by second reading and by title only with further reading waived, ordinance 654. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks for taking the time to answer those questions in detail. We do appreciate that. Any council questions for this item? Okay, seeing none. All right, I'll go ahead and open up public comment. This is public comment for item C-2. Anybody wishing to come forward, please do so. Betty, surprise. Welcome back.
Thank you, Betty Winholtz, and thank you, Mr. Graham. That was lovely. You went down item by item, and I understood exactly what you were saying, and I appreciate it. That was great. So the only thing I have left to say is to beg the city council to pull back the 37 height limit downtown and let us review that. Let the Planning Commission, they've asked you to do that. The community has asked you to do that. We're not saying it's not going to go there, but we feel like we need to spend more time on that. And so I'm asking you, as your legacy people who are leaving us, is this what you want to leave us with? Rumor is that downtown, someone's bought the corner of Monterey and Morro Bay Boulevard, and they want to put up a big old hotel. I just can't imagine that that would be appropriate to get rid of our retail there and put in a hotel. But that's what you're opening up. And so I'm really asking you to pull this back and let's look at it a little more depth, because it will completely change who we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Public comment still open for item C-2. Welcome back, Linda.
As long as I'm still warm in a seat out there, I guess I'll just say my 2 cents worth. I would also ask you to pull back the height of 37 feet downtown. It's just, it'll ruin the feel of downtown over time. I've seen what the height limits and actually non-restrictions, who knows, in San Luis Obispo, what's happened down there. I don't understand those planners, frankly, the city planners. You know, I've lived here 48 years, or I don't even know. I just can't imagine that kind of a change in our downtown. I thank you for nodding your heads. I mean, you know, I get up here week after week, month after month, and I say my piece because that's what we're allowed to do. Frankly, it just seems to like fall on deaf ears. So if you actually shocked the heck out of me tonight and pulled that part of whatever it is you're voting on next out of the motion, I think it would be fabulous. I don't know why it didn't go back to Planning Commission, you know, a month or so ago when you guys acted on it. But I would just really ask you to consider keeping the height limit at what it's at right now, downtown, frankly, all over town. But, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, AGP, do we have any hands raised?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no raised hands in the queue.
I couldn't hear you, sorry?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no raised hands in the queue.
Thank you, okay. Thought you said a raised hand. That closes public comment, bring it back to council for discussion. This is the second reading. I'll open it up to any further discussion on this item. Sure.
Yeah.
Councilmember Addis, please.
I know, Mr. Graham, you've explained this multiple times, but could you again explain if the height limits are raised, is that an automatic approval? Are there still other processes in place for various buildings in that area where the height limits may be raised?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember Addis. So all projects that get submitted to the city are going to go through a discretionary permitting process, especially in the downtown. They're going to go before the Planning Commission, and depending on the size of the lot, also to City Council. We have multiple policies in our general plans, in our zone, in the draft zoning code before you this evening, in the downtown and waterfront strategic plan that deal with design and those types of things. This change would affect about 75 lots in the downtown, and it's just that corridor that runs down Morro Bay Boulevard to Main and then Main to Beach. So it wouldn't pick up the lot that Ms. Winholtz was discussing about, the one at the corner of Monterey and Morro Bay Boulevard. That's outside of that area. So it is a limited impact, I guess, and we do have discretionary processes, where it would go to the Planning Commission at a minimum, and then potentially to City Council, depending on the size of it or if it were appealed.
Could you very briefly, what do you mean when you say discretionary process? Like if it's 37 feet, is automatically approved, or Planning Commission may say no?
The Planning Commission could say no. They could say that the design is inappropriate for a location. It's the maximum that's allowed. Okay, it's no different than a setback. Your maximum setback in a residential zone might be 20 feet for your front yard, or it might be 5 feet for your side. Those types of things. Those are the parameters and the boxes that you have to kind of design to, and then it's really up to the details of that, of whether it's appropriate for the location or not. And that would be reviewed through the public hearing process. Again, the public will get to weigh in on anything that's proposed and provide their input. No different than here this evening at the dais. In relation to the project when it's being heard.
So Planning Commission could decide it's not the right project. City Council could decide it's not the right project.
Correct.
Thank you.
Good question. Other questions? Seeing none. Okay, then I'll just briefly make a comment that I did meet, and I'm linked with Councilmember Ford on this item. We did meet with Mr. Roshan from the Planning Commission to talk in detail about this issue, and I do believe that one or both of us will have a future agenda item to cover the issue in more detail. But tonight I'm prepared to move forward with this, so I'll go ahead and make the recommendation that the staff recommends that we adopt by a second reading and by title only, with further reading waived, by the ordinance number 654, an ordinance of the City Council of Morro Bay, California, repealing and replacing Title 17 zoning and miscellaneous amendments to update zoning language references in page 5-3 of the Waterfront Master Plan and chapters 5.5, 5.6, 7.16, 8.32, 9.28, 10.60, 12.08, 12.12, 13.04, 13.20, 14.44, 14.42, 16.36, and 16.40, and 16.48 of the Morro Bay Municipal Code, and direct staff to submit the application for LCP amendment to the California Coastal Commission for certification. Did I get that all, Chris? Hopefully.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we do have a motion for staff recommendation and a second. Any further discussion?
I'd like to say something really
Yes,
quickly.
please.
Since you did bring up the fact that we have a future agenda item, and I just want to say before we'll get to that when we get to that, but the reason why we have a future agenda item is because we have heard the voices of the, that have come forward, and we've had various voices. We've had a lot of support from various organizations and from community members, but we also have had opposition. And so, I'm prepared to move forward with this. However, I'm looking forward to what we'll be discussing later and proposing to the council.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any further comments? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis.
Yes.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Councilmember Barton.
Yes.
And Mayor Heading.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item C-3. Presentation of Harbor Department Organizational Assessment Report and consideration of resolution number 102-22 authorizing the addition of one harbor patrol officer and approving the associated budget amendment for fiscal year 22-23. Mr. Collins, I believe, will take this.
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, council members, members of the community here and watching at home. Before jumping into this important item that's a long time coming, I just want to acknowledge those who came before and who are still involved in the harbor and seeing its success, which includes Harbor Advisory Board members, past and present, Harbor Department staff, especially our esteemed Harbor Director Eric Endersby, community members who have spoken on one side or the other on B22 have all sort of acknowledged that there is need in this important asset for our community. It's sort of our living room. It's where we go to enjoy nature, to enjoy the water for both of our visitors and for our community members, and an important economic zone for our overall vitality. So these folks I mentioned before have been instrumental in carrying forward a conversation long before it showed up on the ballot box this year, in seeking opportunities to make do with less. And that's sort of been the mantra of this city. I mean, from the beginning, we are not a rich community. We're gutsy. We do a lot on a shoestring budget. And that's not something we should be ashamed of. In fact, I mean, it's pretty amazing how much we've been able to accomplish since the beginnings of our city. And that's a testament to all council members who came before, and city managers and staff who've poured themselves into this. But we have reached a precipice and have been able to continue to provide important services and also take care of the asset that is there, that was constructed by the Navy and has been cared for by the county and the city since that time that we incorporated, and we have work to do. So we really appreciate all those who've come up forward with ideas to try to sort this out. And also seek new streams of revenue because the costs only go up, and we seem to have milked everything we can in terms of the existing revenue opportunities. But that remains to be seen if that's true or not. So we're grateful that we're at this place where we can begin to address some of the issues while challenges still remain. Which brings us to this item, which I'll present and hopefully not take too much of your time, because I think it's really important to hear from the community and the council more than from me about what to do next. But we had an assessment conducted by the Center for Organization Effectiveness, who, as council and the community may recall, helped facilitate the city council goals discussion last year. And we found them to be invaluable from that perspective, also helping our department head team gel as we have a lot of new members, and also taking a look at some of our departments, including the harbor department. So just move forward like that. So I just wanted to cover a little bit of background on the staffing history and the purpose for the TCFOE. That's what we call them, TCFOE, or the center. I'll just refer to them as the center, their assessment. And talk about the methodology and findings from the center, as well as their recommendations. And then a complement to that is the staff recommendations about how to implement their recommendations. The staff report goes in a lot more detail. Credit to Mr. Endersby. He's a great historian, I should say, and storyteller, and he pulled together a pretty good approximation of kind of how things have gone on the staffing front since the 80s. But at our peak in harbor department staffing, we had 8 full-time individuals and a part-time complement. And that reached its peak in 2010. And for a variety of reasons and challenges really around the Great Recession and City Council making hard decisions on with the closure of the power plant, and we've seen that reduction down to 6 full-time equivalents. Not laying blame on anybody, that's just a reality we had to face and try to do more with less. So I think there was this feeling in my conversations with staff and with the harbor directors that perhaps we were a little too threadbare, particularly with all of the things that the harbor department manages, which includes the patrol of our waterfront, but also managing a pretty complex array of lease sites and being sort of a landlord, which is a pretty unique circumstance for a city, especially on the waterfront, especially folks who are focused sort of on law enforcement and code enforcement also carry that business side, I guess. And so we've been asking a lot of those 6 individuals, and City Council did update the lease management policy in 2020. There was about a 1.5 year effort that Eric Endersby and members of HAB and Chamber and others were involved in, really give a wholesale look at that and try to modernize the policy. But one of the key findings from that was that we really needed to pay more attention to how we manage our leases. I think with 6 folks who are also responsible for law enforcement on the water and code enforcement on the water and boater safety on the water, we're also trying to modernize the lease management approach is probably too much. So there was a feeling that we were probably understaffed in that component. But we did hit COVID-19 right around the same time that realization was met. And so we weren't able to proceed into an assessment until last year. And so initially the assessment was meant to look specifically at that lease management component. Eric is our harbor director, sort of is our lease manager, but he's also gets called out to go on rescues and other code enforcement actions in addition to, trying to manage our waterfront with one other admin FTE. So again, that sort of covers the method, the purpose of the review. And when we brought in the center to look at that, they felt, after a few interviews, that we probably need to look at the whole department because there's so much interchange between those who are doing the harbor patrolling and also, doing the lease management. So really wanted to understand, kind of the load that was on there, the demands, and how we were utilizing those resources and see if there was ways to be more efficient, but also assess if additional resources were required. So the methodology included in-depth discussions with the city staff, particularly harbor department, but also myself, HR, finance, and department head team, because there's a lot of interplay between all of our departments on the water, including fire and police and public works. And conducted stakeholder interviews of leaseholders, business owners, harbor advisory board members, and the like to get their understanding and take on it. And then the center did their own analysis of the operations and finances for the harbor department. So I apologize, these are kind of small, but I didn't really want to do a disservice to them and not list them all. So this is all spelled out in the staff report as well as the attached assessment report. There's 4 buckets. One is facilities, a lot of deferred maintenance, as I had mentioned. Do our best with a little, and it's starting to show. Insufficient funding to address the backlog of capital projects that was discussed at length in the community in the discussion around ballot measure B22. Insufficient maintenance log to ensure that maintenance activities are being performed. Outdated harbor office equipment and just the office itself. On the operations bucket, they identified that there's a lack of knowledge within all the departments and how they interplay with the harbor department, and that we probably could do a better job of sharing resources. We need to understand what the harbor is and is not responsible for. It's not always clear to the public as well as to staff internally. Limited staff overall to cover operations, and then training and certifications are falling behind. The other buckets are organizational staffing and structure, and then the business and lease management. Under the structure and staffing, The center found the harbor department to be friendly, dedicated, and accommodating. That's a plus, and it's a minus in some cases. A plus because they're seen as a can-do. You call, they're gonna take care of you. But the deficit is that you're often taking care of those issues at the expense of some of the more strategic things. So it's a balancing act. They're short-staffed, and current staff is stretched thin. There's a lack of succession planning. Again, no fault of Eric or anybody. It's just they're always on the go and haven't had time to be strategic and help develop folks. The harbor director's current job functions have many competing priorities, which require trade-offs. Under the business and lease management, there's a need to modernize the financial system. There's a tension between leaseholders and our sort of being in play between both being the manager of leases but also code enforcement, and some tensions that create with those who we're doing business with. We don't have sufficient reserve funds to address capital needs. We need to sort of modernize overall and be prepared to deal with the fact that tourism as we know it today isn't going to change. It's probably not going to go back to pre-COVID levels. In fact, we may see it increase over time. So it's just something that the Harbor Department is front and center on. So with that, they turned those into recommendations. So they'll probably sound very similar, just kind of a change in verb. But under the facilities, we need a maintenance schedule. We need to collaborate between the community development and the tied leaseholders in terms of what projects they would like to see come forward. Partner with the Public Works Department in overseeing the capital improvement projects. Is a lot of ways Harbor's been left to their own devices for too long, and the new Public Works Director has made a commitment to changing that. The Harbor Department building is in disarray. Either needs to be renovated or upgraded or removed and replaced. On the organizational structure staffing, need to expand organizational structure to include fully staffed department, which, again, this is the center speaking, to convert the current supervisor of patrol into a manager position, create a new harbor patrol officer position, create a new harbor business manager position, which gets at the leaseholder or the lease management question that council originally had us look at. And equitable pay is a challenge, and succession planning is discussed before. On the operations, we need to increase collaboration between departments, improve finance management, and upgrade and convert paper to digital files. And last, on the business and lease management, need to create robust title and trust leaseholder customer relationship management system, explore revenue generating ideas, and then update the Harbor Department website to be more of a kind of a branding effort as a promotional effort. So with all those in mind, there's a lot there to absorb, and so we're going through it as staff and implementing those things that don't require money. Frankly, it's just a lot more of the collaboration and seeking efficiencies and pulling together as a team to help make those improvements. But we do recommend, sort of beyond that, is adding a Harbor Patrol officer position at this time. It was identified that we've been one short, really, for almost 12 years now. So there's that staffing level piece. And further, we're going with Eric Indersby announcing his retirement at the end of the year. We're looking to pivot the Harbor Director position to be more of that business entrepreneurial side versus sort of being caught in between like Eric has been the whole time, being a boat guy and also kind of running the business end. And then we just, like everybody else, we've had a really challenging time hiring part-time staff to be our reserve component for patrol. So it's really stressing out our staff that remain. And this is just happening everywhere across the board, especially in Central Coast, where it's becoming more and more expensive to live, and people really just are having a hard time getting by on part-time wages. So with all that in mind, we believe a Harbor Patrol officer position is warranted at this time. And further, we're going through the recruitment for the Harbor Director position. We're hopeful that we'll land a great director who will focus on the admin and business side, and we'll work with myself and the new city council to sort of really hone in on the right set of staffing complement or contracting out complement or whatever the case may be to really maximize that lease management component. Because, while we don't have a lot of leases coming up, there are things that we need to do, like audit the leases, not only from a financial standpoint, but also, are they complying on the physical improvements that they're required to do per leases? And we just honestly haven't been able to put enough eyes and ears on that. Not because of a lack of effort, but just because of being too short-staffed. So those are our recommendations. We did do analysis on the harbor finances to ensure we actually can pull this off. So from an operational standpoint, we do have sufficient annual revenues over expenses that could support this position and potentially further staffing. Right now, it's about $250,000 to $350,000 more revenue than expenses at this point in time, projected for the next several years. This analysis assumes that both, it's a conservative estimate of harbor revenues. We're sort of averaging pre-COVID years and sort of where we're at and expecting moving forward. Continued support of the Harbor Fund for Measure E and Q. Very, very thankful for the community for passing Measure E, because that's been able to allow us to invest in our waterfront. Small but consistent investment in harbor capital needs and maintain Harbor Fund balance over 20%. And we anticipate increased PERS contributions from the Harbor Fund. That analysis took that into account. What obviously remains is still there's a significant capital need that can't be met by this amount, but we're going to keep working that problem. There's got to be other solutions, and we're working on that. And we'll obviously bring those forward to City Council and the Harbor Advisory Board as we work on those. So we recommend that you receive the report and then adopt resolution number 10222, adding the HPO position to the fiscal year 22-23 budget and approving the necessary budget amendment for addition of that position. With that, happy to answer any questions. And Eric has a mask on, so he'll just mumble through if you ask him. So.
Mumble.
Yeah.
Mumble's the word. Thank you, Scott, and appreciate bringing in the consultant to do the organizational analysis. I think it was ripe for that, probably overdue from a long time standpoint for a number of reasons, including, the financial situation with regard to the enterprise fund, lack of ability to fund capital long-term for many years. And also, the staffing issue, and not the least of which includes lease management activities and business operations. So my question is, to be really direct, why are you piecemealing this with regard to the recommendation? What I'm seeing here is that this may end up being three new positions: this immediate Harbor Patrol Officer position. You're recruiting for a new manager, yet I haven't heard the one of the most important issues for me, the business and lease management issue, addressed. And so, again, to be very direct with regard to discussions that we've had a number of times, could you perhaps elaborate your thought organizationally on how this plays out from a financial standpoint in terms of hiring what appears to be the need for 3 new FTEs, or am I missing something, or how are we gonna get the functions done, and what are the FTE requirements going to be to do that, and what's your vision for the new harbor director position and its responsibilities? Yeah, that's a bunch of stuff, but I think perhaps you know where I'm going.
I think I understand the question. I definitely don't want to piecemeal, but I also think it's a function of where we're at in the history of the department with Eric retiring. I don't think it's right to make these decisions without the person who will kind of oversee it and without knowing their skill sets and their vision. I don't think this would be a lengthy review for the new person, and that if we can onboard them early next year, review the document that the center provided, and talk to staff and past and present Harbor Advisory Board members. But really, it's going to be a discussion with me and them to figure this out. I think there's a sense that there's another position within, on the business management side. We just don't know what it is. And so when I really understand what that new person's skill set is, that would maybe determine if that business manager position is a higher level or more of a mid-level or lower level, right? I mean, that's what I don't want to prejudge that. And so I think that's going to require, some discernment on my part in terms of the person coming in and what they're capable of and what the vision is. So I think there's that. The harbor director would just be a replacement of Eric. It's not a new position. It's really that business management position would be the added one. Would that be enough? I don't know. But right now we're operating with Eric and then Lori, who's great. She's sort of at the mid-level, and she's really comfortable with that. So I think she would still be able to support the new director and a business manager position. And that may be enough of a complement to do a good job on the leases.
Okay, so I think I understand it.
Yeah.
And potentially what I'm hearing is you're now recruiting for a new harbor director whose job description doesn't include the business management functions, correct?
There's probably going to be a part of that, but they would be the leader. They would be the visionaries. They'd be setting that. They'd be working on offshore wind, for instance. They'd be looking at revenue enhancements. They'd be working with the Corps on dredging and other things like
lease management. I'll be more specific.
Right.
Lease management.
Yeah, they would be involved in that too. But I think we're finding is even if you shift, because the director's duty is more to that, there's still probably a need for a dedicated position to the leases.
And did I hear you say a revenue minus expenses would be about $250K a year, and you feel right now that's projected for the next few years, and that would be adequate to cover, I know, this position, but what about the remainder of the concepts that we've talked about, including lease management, business management, new director, et cetera?
Yeah.
And that also leaves, the elephant in the room, which is the tremendous need for capital replacement. And again, not having, in my opinion, the way it sounds, any significant funds to address long-term capital.
Yeah. Yeah, that the long-term capital is a system-wide challenge. We had the conversation on paving a couple months ago, and I think we're making improvements, but yeah, the number is staggering. I assume the same when the full assessment is done on the capital needs in the harbor will be a similarly staggering number, and you just got to keep working the problem. But we're not sufficiently staffed to work the problem effectively. That's our feeling. So I think that revenue over expenses is a conservative figure that we feel comfortable we could bring in a new HPO position and another administrative position that would shore up the lease management component, which was the clear desire of the council, and which we wanted to start working on earlier, but we're waylaid by the pandemic, and here we are.
Yeah, and so in your staff report, page 357, you say, and I'm trusting your judgment, that there is a clear, immediate need for an additional harbor patrol officer.
Yes.
I assume that's been the case for a while.
It's become more of a challenge because A, Eric is retiring, and he covers a lot more shifts than I was aware of, and B, the reserve component. We're not able to fill the reserve positions like we used to be able to.
Yeah, and again, in the staff report, not to belabor this, but you state, or in the report it states, based upon the findings, same paragraph, based upon the findings of this assessment and previously stated desires of the city council, the city manager is placing an emphasis for the new harbor director to assume more of the administrative business role compared to the current approach.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's that component you're talking about. Right. But you'll probably need, the way I'm understanding this, additional resources in addition to a new harbor director and this FTE in order to
Right.
fully manage appropriately the leases on the
There's likely going to be a need for resources on the administrative business side beyond the director. But we don't know what that is. I don't want to prejudge what that is, but there is sufficient revenues to address that issue. That's what we're trying to convey here. I just don't know what exactly that is. And I'm hoping that we are successful in our recruitment, and that'll bring a lot of clarity to me as far as what they're capable of, and then what additional resources could be brought to that, whether it's another position or a contract.
Okay, thanks. Other council questions for Scott?
I guess I have one kind of a follow-up question. So if we were to have an FTE that was dedicated more to the least managerial side of things, do you feel as though that person could increase, I don't know if the revenue is the correct term, but could almost pay for themselves as far as, if there's more attention to the management and what's happening there, is there potential for that to produce more income in any way, shape, or form? I don't know that I'm wording this correctly, but financially, could we benefit from having someone in that dedicated position?
Yeah, I wouldn't put a number on it, but yes, the answer is yes. We would anticipate if you had a dedicated resource that's auditing the books on a very detailed level, that would render additional revenues. And if the director is freed up to concern themselves with the entrepreneurial side and revenue side, that would potentially bear fruit in additional, revenues as well. I'm not going to guarantee that, but that is absolutely an aim of making these changes, because we recognize that we've done the best we can with what we have, and there's a feeling of want from the council, from the community members, from people I talk to, and business owners, and even leaseholders themselves. And I think that would all point in that direction. But I'm not going to put a metric out there that's going to pay for itself. But I think there would be additional revenues brought to the city as a result.
Okay. And am I allowed to ask Mr. Endersby?
You might not be able to hear him, but yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just, if you don't mind giving us a personal account of what it's been like being down an FTE over the years, and what adding an additional FTE would mean to the harbor. I mean, I know City Manager Collins has covered it pretty well, but just your firsthand experience, like what does that mean to your staff to add someone else?
Well, thanks, Councilmember. I'll try not to mumble too much. I came off that lung crud last week, and my voice disappeared, and I'm just getting it back. So I apologize, and hopefully I don't have a coughing fit, and I got to go run. But we'll see. We went down one FTE back in 2010, and then in COVID, we went down another, and it's been a real challenge, to say the least. My staff and myself have always been such that we've just put our heads down and got the job done, and gotten what needed to get done, and not made a lot of noise, and just gone on with our lives and our jobs and made things happen. Hasn't been an ideal situation, but it is what it is, and we are where we're at today. COVID hit, threw the world into tailspin, and especially from an employment standpoint. We used to have a fair amount of reserve patrol officers, just talking about the operational side, that were pretty consistently working for us and staying with us for a while. That all changed in COVID, and we lost almost everybody through COVID, and we fortunately have gotten some more back now, but still, they're green and they're new, and they're going to take some training. So we're just trying to get back up to, on the patrol side, on the operational side, just get back up to some semblance of normalcy. I think in what Scott was trying to get at, in any form of a new organizational chart, as we started through this process starting back in the springtime, any new organizational chart put a new Harbor Patrol officer back, or additional Harbor Patrol officer back into the mix, no matter what the business side showed. Back when I was operations manager, I was very active operationally, much more so than I was now, and then I had 4 patrol officers under me. Now we've got 4 total, Becca, 1 patrol supervisor, and 3 officers, so we're down 1. We relied on the reserves to make that up, and some years that worked, some years it didn't, but it's kind of to the breaking point now where we've got to get it fixed somehow, and the officer position was the most logical place to start.
Thank you for doing that. I'm sorry to make you talk, but I appreciate that. It's good to hear directly from the source that has been affected by this over the years, and so I appreciate your answer.
Thank you.
And that's all the questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Addis, any questions? No. Councilmember Barton, any questions?
I just wanted to make a comment to thank you, Scott, for bringing in an outside agency to help look at this and give us a fresh perspective. So that's it.
Good, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and open up public comment. This is for item C-3. Public comment is now open. Seeing nobody in our audience, CGP, do we have anybody with their hand raised?
Mayor, there is no raised hands.
Okay, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the council for discussion, motion, emotion. Any?
I'll move it, but hopefully I can read it correctly.
Oh, okay, you're ready to make
My
a
record
recommendation.
has not been very good. Very accurate.
If you can read it correctly.
Yeah, if I can read it, we'll get
Use
through
the staff report.
Okay.
Yeah, not the agenda, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I move that we, let's see here if I have the right thing here. So we're just doing the number 2, correct? Because the first is a receive and file?
Right.
Okay. So I move that we adopt resolution number 102-22, adding an additional Harbor Patrol Officer, HPO, position to the fiscal year 2022-23 budget and approving the necessary budget amendment for addition of that position. Is that sufficient?
That is absolutely sufficient.
Okay.
I'll second
You did a great
that.
job. And there's a second. We have a motion for a staff recommendation and a second. Any further discussion? And let me add a couple of things. One, thank you, Eric, for weighing in, being muzzled, but weighing in. We appreciate that very much. And again, I know we said it and we'll probably say it again, but you made a couple of comments about just putting your head down and making sure things continue to happen during rough times, and I really appreciate you and your staff doing that. I think that shows a lot of integrity and commitment to the city, and I just want to thank you, and I hope you'll relay that, because I know your staff members aren't watching this meeting intently right now. Maybe they are. But if you'll relate that to them, I think from all of us, I would very much appreciate that and say thank you again to you. And Scott, thank you for having the external analysis done. You know, I've talked to you, so there's no surprises whatsoever, directly about my concerns about the lease management issues and the potential for significant, I think, increases in revenue if they're managed appropriately. I know you've taken that to heart. My concern is that I do see the need, and I'm going to be supporting the motion, but I don't want to let die the notion that with either the appropriate hiring of a new director, we really need to look at, in my opinion, the lease management function as a separate entity, and that we avail ourselves of the appropriate resources to manage those assets to maximize revenues for the city. Otherwise, my fear is we will continue to get farther behind. We will get farther behind on our capital needs, and those will hit us suddenly and could cripple really the community greatly, or the city greatly. So I will be supporting it, but I just wanted to make that comment. So thank you for that. Any other comments? Discussion? Seeing none, okay, go ahead and ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes, I actually have a comment.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I want to thank the harbor director for all you've done, Eric, and seeing, you've done a lot over the years I've been on council, and clearly before that, but through COVID that you mentioned, I know it was a particularly trying time with the influx of folks to Morro Bay and trying to navigate that as a department, and just to say thank you for all the work that you've done over this time.
Who is that?
Can I just say ditto to all the things? But I also want to add that it's just been an honor. I've only been on council for a year, Mr. Endersby, and in that short amount of time, I've had a chance to work with you several times, and I just appreciate the work that you do. And you do so much more than meets the eye. A lot of people aren't aware of all the other tasks that you do besides helping patrol our harbor, helping, direct staff, lease management, all those things, but also you're a huge advocate for our fishing industry, our fishers. We're considered a fishing town, and you certainly take that to heart, and you have advocated for our fishing industry for a long time, and I have seen it firsthand, and so I just want to thank you for all that you've done.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item C-4, discuss and consider adoption of resolution number 103-22, adopting the City of Morro Bay's flagpole policy, and consider adoption of resolution number 104-22, approving the flying of the Rainbow Pride flag at City Hall during the month of June in recognition of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus Pride Month in the City of Morro Bay. And this one goes to Mr. Newmeyer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. So this item is before the City Council tonight. Back in June of this year, the City Council adopted a resolution declaring June of this year LGBTQ plus Pride Month, and Council asked for a policy to be brought back for consideration of flying the Pride flag next June. So there's no fiscal impact to this item, and there's two resolutions before you. One is a flag policy, and the second resolution is to allow the Pride flag to be flown next June if that policy is adopted. So the staff report goes into a lot of the constitutional issues here, but basically boiling it down to there's a few options for the city if there's a desire to fly the Pride flag next June. The first option is to simply open up the flagpole, which right now only has the American flag, state flag, and city flag at times, to open it up to public requests. And if the city opens it up, then under forum analysis, constitutional forum analysis, the city really can't pick and choose what flags go up. So the city could put the Pride flag up, but without a policy, constitutional restrictions require the city to generally fly any flag that shows up. This was settled pretty much by the U.S. Supreme Court recently in a case out of Boston where the city allowed a lot of flags to go up, and then a flag the city didn't like, a member of the public requested it to go up, and the Supreme Court said there's no policy, so you can't pick and choose. So that's one option, and if the city goes with that one, no policy, then it's pretty much going to need to fly virtually any flag that a public member requests. The other option is to have a policy by the city. And so what that does is it transforms under constitutional analysis this flag raising of non-traditional flags, it turns it into government speech, which means that this is a message that the city is supporting, this is a message that the city is picking. And the policy that's being proposed, I believe, is constitutionally sound insofar as the only flags that would be flown are ones that a majority of the city council approves to go up. There is the third option of staff deciding which flags go up, but I think that's fraught with liability. I think the decision should stick with city council on which flags do and do not go up to avoid exposure to liability. So those are basically your options. The staff report goes into a lot of constitutional analysis to support what these options are. Each have their pros and cons. And so those are the vehicles that the City Council has to fly a Pride flag next June. I'd recommend, if you want to fly a Pride flag, that you would go with adopting the policy, and then you would adopt the resolution that makes the first flag to be flown, the Pride flag, next June. Hopefully that covers the issues in a short and succinct manner without going through the long, lengthy staff report. I'm open for any questions you might have on these different options.
Great, Chris, thank you. I did read your staff report, and it was great background, and I appreciate your summary. It was just spot on, so that really made it easy. I just have a couple of questions. One, the way I understand it is without a policy, we would be declaring the flagpoles a public place for free speech, and any flag could be flown whether we like it or not.
That would be the most likely outcome if somebody were to challenge the city and say, what about my flag? And that could be any flag.
But correct me if I'm wrong, again, this policy specifically identifies our flagpoles as not being public spaces where free speech would be, quote unquote, my term allowed.
That is correct, and the best example as provided in the staff report is that it's kind of common sense, but during World War II, when the U.S. government was promoting the war effort and was asking people to enlist, was promoting war bonds, that was government speech. So there wasn't an obligation to provide anti-war platforms. Likewise here, if the city formally says that this is the city's message, this is the city's speech, this is a non-public forum, then the city council chooses what goes up there.
Great, and that was my last question. If there were other flags prior to the second part of the recommendation would be to fly the flag, the pride flag, on a date certain in the future, the city council could consider a request for another flag if this passed anytime before that, correct?
Yes.
Another flag.
Yes, the policy, it's just half a page. It's Exhibit A in the staff report on page 392. And in summary, it provides that a majority of the city council has to approve a flag, which I'd mentioned. And then it gives details, which is that they fly no more than 30 days or a calendar month. And the type of flag would be basically a commemorative flag. And, that's pretty wide open on what it could be. But yes, the city council then could bring forth a resolution in a few months to fly a different flag to commemorate a different occasion, but only if a majority of the council supports it would the flag go up.
Yeah, and I guess the real question was, another flag could be approved prior to the first flying of the pride flag according to the other part of the resolution?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. And let me ask if there are any other questions. To my left, Councilmember Ford, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Addis, any questions?
I don't have any, but I am ready to move.
Okay.
Move you a little bit? Here, there you go.
Councilmember Barton?
No questions.
Okay. I will then go to public comment. This is public comment for item C-4 on our agenda this evening. Any member of the public wishing to come forward may do so now. Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Judy Setting, Morro Bay resident. So, in light of what you said, I'm a little confused by this, but I just want to go ahead and read my statement. And in the United States, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of minority groups that would welcome the chance to be recognized by the opportunity to have their flag or symbol flown over city halls. Approval of this resolution will set a precedent for other minority groups or organizations to submit requests to fly their flag. It stands to reason we are setting ourselves up for lawsuits that may result from denying a group that we deem to have a harmful agenda. An example is those believing in the Confederate flag and all it represents. Individuals and businesses have the right and opportunity to fly flags and banners of their choice. Our City Hall is in the business of representing all citizens, not adopting resolutions that may offend some and represent a small minority. I just want to add that in listening to our attorney, it just sounds to me like we're opening the door for something that could be taken, kind of differently by a lot of citizens. I'm not feeling that all citizens are being represented. And I don't know that, well, I do know that our city hall is our government, and we are to represent all citizens. And this practice that we would be adopting, even though they could fly, somebody else could request, whatever their group is, and, hopefully get it passed by City Hall. But I just feel like we're not representing everybody. Even if City Hall was to, say, hey, yeah, fly your Confederate flag, we're going to have some pretty upset citizens, so we're kind of opening the door, and I'm trying to figure out what is the big positive of this. Yes, we're representing a very well-known group, but they have the ability to be represented in other ways. I mean, businesses can, fly their flag, individual homes fly their flags, events that they have, So that's the big positive for them that's already in place. And I just feel that we're opening a door to where we're not representing all 10,000 citizens of Morro Bay. And it just doesn't seem fair to give that authority to just, without any survey being done or anything like that.
Thank you. Public comment is still open for item C-4. Welcome, Linda.
Good evening again. I don't think I could have said it any better than Miss Setting, or Mrs. Setting. So I concur what Judy just said, and I hope that you will take that into consideration. I think our city attorney laid that out very well for you, so consider this wisely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Public comment is still open for item C-4. Seeing no other public comment, AGP, do we have anybody with their hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have no raised hands in the queue.
Okay, I'll close public comment, bring it back to council for further discussion. One comment indicated that the approval of this policy would increase the likelihood or probability, my word, of lawsuits. Can you just comment on that, Chris?
This policy, if adopted, I believe is consistent with the United States Supreme Court decision that came out of Boston about a year ago. So I can't say that people won't sue the city, but I believe that it's consistent with the law, and so I believe that the city would be on solid legal ground. This policy is the equivalent of the city council, city, decides to do proclamations at city council meetings, and they decide to honor certain groups. There's no First Amendment right to have your proclamation brought into city council meetings because that's government speech. So to be clear, any flag that the council chooses by majority to put up, that would be the message that the council's sending. But that is the council's message that, the elected representatives of the city. So I guess the best way to look at it is that it's like the proclamations that are regularly done at council meetings. You don't have a right to present your own proclamations. That's the city decision. So I don't see any of those lawsuits having any traction.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, I'll open it up for any further discussion or entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay. Yes.
I'll move the staff recommendation that we approve an amendment to the agreement and memorandum of understanding. Wait, I'm on the wrong one. Let me back up. That was C5. Here we go. Let me pull it up. I'm so sorry.
Here, let me read it.
I got it here. All right, here we go. That we adopt resolution number 10322, adopting the City of Morro Bay's flag pole policy, and 10422, approving the flying of the Rainbow Pride flag at City Hall during the month of June in recognition of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus Pride Month in the City of Morro Bay.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on staff recommendation Any further discussion?
I'd just like to say something real quick.
Please.
I just want to kind of shed a little light on why I support this item. Actually, I've spent a lot of my lifetime in advocacy and for equal rights and for all humans. And so when this came along, of course, I'm like, oh, sure, that sounds great. And then I also had to consider the protection of our city, because that's also my job as a council member. And so after doing my research and also listening again to the city attorney's response to possible litigation, I feel more comfortable in that protection. But I also want to address the fact that I truly believe, and after listening to so many that came forward when we decided to put this on as a future agenda item, we had an overwhelming amount of our community that wrote in, and also we had a full house of folks that were here that were in support and felt supported by even the idea that we might consider something like this. We had very many people from our community that said, wow, I actually feel welcome, where I didn't know that I was welcome before. And so that helped me to understand even more the importance that it's not necessarily a way of eliminating certain parts of our community, but instead it's a way of illuminating and supporting parts of our community. And so for that reason, I'm supporting this evening.
Great, thank you for those comments. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say thank you, Jen, for bringing that up. I remember now, it just all came flooding back when you said that about the crowd that was here and how supported they felt by the mere idea that we might do this. And it was I thought that was a very touching kind of a evening. So that's why I'll be supporting it.
Okay. And do you have another comment? Go ahead.
I just looked up some figures here from the Human Rights. Let me just get from the Human Rights Campaign, and basically what it says, and I want to echo what Councilmember Ford said, and the welcoming environment that Councilmember Barton just referred to, but that nearly 1 in 5 of any type of hate crime is now motivated by anti-LGBTQ plus bias, and that it's incredibly important. I think the timing of this is very poignant in light of the shootings in Colorado, that Morro Bay does take a stand, that we do use the limited ability that we have to support the entire community, and that to me, there's states and communities across our nation that are taking the exact opposite stance, and that it's really up to us to be the antidote to that, to be welcoming to our entire community, regardless of the numbers of people in the community. I would just suggest that it's not they, it's we that we're supporting with this ordinance, and that it's our responsibility to make sure that we approach this as a we as opposed to a they.
Thanks, and I'll comment that, when this initially did come and we had a significant turnout with a proclamation for declaring, I forgot what month it was, but yeah, July LGBTQ plus month, there was a request to fly flags, and this council very wisely said, hold on, consulted with our attorney to look at the potential for a policy development. And to me, the policy development really is a more welcoming statement to all of the community to allow the city council to take input on flying other flags of importance to the community. And those can come forward from community members, but the decision would rest in the elected officials that you've elected to make that decision. And so I think what this does is protects us from lawsuits. Other cities in this county have decided to do it without a policy. And I think, in my opinion, that has potentially been very harmful to them because of the lack of said policy. So again, for all the reasons stated, I'll be supporting that as well. So I'll go ahead and ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. We're almost there. This is item C-5, to approve an updated memorandum of understanding for sharing Central Coast Community Energy Board seats, which should go fairly quickly. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. The recommendation is to approve an amendment to the agreement and memorandum of understanding with the City of San Luis Obispo for sharing Policy Board, Operations Board, and Community Advisory Committee seats on the Central Coast Community Energy Group, and authorize the city manager to execute amendment to the agreement and memorandum of understanding in a form subject to approval by the city attorney's office. So just a little bit of background. The city in San Luis Obispo and other communities are part of the what used to be called the Monterey Bay Community Power, which essentially purchases purchases electricity on behalf of the community and provides opportunities for greening the grid, and also creating local jobs and local programs to help increase and enhance energy efficiency and help reduce costs to the consumer as well. The city joined in 2019, and at that time, per the rules of what became the Central Coast Community Energy Group, is that a city with a population of 50,000 or more has a seat, and smaller communities, pool together with other communities to create a seat. And so we did that with the city of San Luis Obispo. The city of San Luis Obispo has a history of being out on front and lead on climate change, climate adaptation, green energy, and the like. Have staff who are dedicated to that resource. So we demurred and gave them the policy board, operation board, and advisory board seats. Fast forward to last year or a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, Paso Robles joined the CCE, and so the three of us partnered together. We revised the MOU at that time so that the three cities were sharing and still had City of SLO and lead. Now the City of Atascadero has joined the CCE, so now Paso will be splitting off from us, the three cities, and joining together with Atascadero. So now we're back to Morro Bay in the City of San Luis Obispo. And again, we believe it's in our best interest to continue to have them serve in that capacity. They have leadership roles now. Derek Johnson, as the city manager, may ultimately be the board chair for the operations board, which means the mayor would also potentially be the lead, which means potentially greater resources for our region. This is San Benito, Monterey, Santa Cruz, Santa Barbara counties are all part of this group now, and most of the cities they're in. So it's a great privilege to have a local representative leading that group. So we believe it's wise to continue to have them serve in that capacity and represent us well. We do coordinate behind the scenes to make sure that we know where they're going with votes and what new issues are coming up, and what programs are going to be available for our community and for the city to help green us, our economy locally. So again, we recommend moving forward with the recommendations I stated earlier, to continue to provide that leadership from the City of SLO and input from the City of Morro Bay for that seat. Happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for that staff report. We appreciate it. Any council questions? Scott? Seeing none? Okay. Go ahead and open public comment. This is public comment for item C-5. Anybody wishing to comment on that, please come forward. Seeing none. AGP, any calls on A5?
Thank you, Mayor. There is no raised hands.
Thank you. Go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to council. It's been great to be an early part of CCC and CCE now. And certainly this allows us to continue to have a voice, and there's no reason, in my opinion, to upset the apple cart. I think they're doing a great job of representing us, and now it'll be back to San Luis Obispo and Morro Bay. So I will be supporting this. And any other comments or no? All right. I will go ahead and recommend that we approve an amendment to the agreement and memorandum of understanding with the City of San Luis Obispo for sharing Policy Board, Operations Board, and Community Advisory Committee seats on Central Coast Community Energy, and that we authorize the city manager to execute the amendment to the agreement and memorandum of understanding in a form subject to approval by the city attorney's office. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Great, thank you. And that brings us to item D. I do believe we have at least one, perhaps future agenda item. Councilmember Ford.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
How did I know,
Turn on.
right? How did I know?
How did you know? I had the pleasure of discussing this with the mayor. We were linked on this, and we had the chance to meet with a planning commissioner who also, helped us with a better understanding of what a design district could look like. And so, after looking at the height increase to 37 feet and listening to our community with their concerns about what does that look like downtown, how do we prevent just a ugly, massive wall of buildings and that sort of thing. And so I'd like to propose that the council consider tonight a downtown design district. A subcommittee from the Morro Bay Planning Commission would propose the extension of district boundaries, both length and width, with the restricted balance of a form-based zoning code requirement with height increases. Other incentives for affordable housing would further benefit the community. And if you're curious what a form-based code is, I don't know if anyone has a question about what
Tell
that
us,
is.
please, because
Okay, so it's basically a means of regulating land development to achieve a specific urban form. So it's just a more predictable way of getting results when you're planning. So, so I just wanted to see if we could get that on a future agenda if the council all can agree or.
Well,
the
we're
majority.
linked, so obviously I support it, and we have talked to Mr. Collins. Yes, did you
Is
want to
it
make
an
a
ad
comment?
hoc group, like the one that we're doing on the zoning?
I believe it's an ad hoc group we talked about.
Subcommittee would be a council-driven.
Not a council-approved subcommittee.
Ad
yes.
hoc.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. So let's change that wording to ad hoc.
Was it not a subcommittee of the planning commission?
Well, we can't, well, that's up
You want to change that?
Authorized creation of the subcommittees on.
Well, I don't know if
advisory-
that's what I'm asking. Is it a subcommittee or an ad hoc group? Because it's two different things. So I just want to.
Desire originally from the commission, when they were making the recommendations to city council, was to form a planning commission subcommittee for this. That was the desire. So if the council's interested in supporting what the planning commission was asking for, it was that. Certainly, we could, I could sit down with the planning commission and we could flesh it out a little bit, then we bring it back, for like an official authorization by council. What it might look like.
Okay.
Put the rails on.
Yeah, a subcommittee. It was.
Yeah, I
was
believe,
the-
yeah, yes. Does that sound,
That's what, that
Sound
was, the-
doable?
that was the
Yeah.
original request by,
Right.
by your planning commission.
Yes.
Councilmember, if I could suggest a little bit of flexibility in terms of what exactly the subgroup would be of the planning commission and the city council, because there's different restrictions based upon the type of group that's formed. So whether it's a subcommittee, ad hoc, some other type of group, I think maybe just a subgroup, and then Director Graham could talk to Planning Commission further on the composition and the duration and the mission statement and whatnot.
Well, the recommendation was not to have a city council member on it. It was planning commission only.
Okay. Well,
Right,
whatever you desire, but I agree with the attorney that some flexibility here would be good, just given the transition we're heading into, and
What flexibility would you like?
just to look at formation of some type of group to review.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Hey, Jen?
So would you want me to attempt?
Formation of a
Do you want me to
group.
attempt? Yeah. Do you want me to attempt to reword this?
Yeah, why don't
Okay, so I would like for council to consider the formation of a downtown design district that would be a subcommittee of the Morro Bay Planning Commission.
Not as,
No?
Could I interrupt?
yes, you could.
May I, council member?
Sure.
Make a suggestion?
Sure.
Could an item come back that is a bit more broad to look at just a group that might look at downtown design guidelines without defining at this juncture who's in that group.
I would just suggest that we avoid the exact term subcommittee because it comes with certain restrictions if we use that term. So
Comes
a
a formal
subgroup,
body,
a task group, a task force, you know, some composition that's not a quorum of the planning commission to look into this.
You're not taking action tonight, so.
No.
Yeah.
The broader, the better, and then Scott, Graham, and I can talk to planning commissioner members, council members, maybe even the current ad hoc group that's looking at zoning. You know, and maybe that's the place that this lands, or it's a planning subcommittee, but we can spell those options out for the council to decide.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that if Councilmember Ford is, and I would support that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I'm seeing other heads going, yeah. So are we good then? Okay, good. And are there any other items? Hopefully not. Okay, hearing none. The next regular meeting of the Morro Bay City Council will be held on Tuesday, December 13th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. Wishing everybody out there a very happy and safe Thanksgiving holiday. And thank you for the privilege of your time. We are adjourned.